king like me would be beaten into the ground like this. I even cut off my own flesh to feed others. Since I am doomed to die here, you can give up any further thoughts of obtaining my essence energy." The Asura King's eyes flashed with a ruthless and savage light. Then, it concentrated its thoughts, focusing everything on the core of its source energy in its body. At that moment, the Asura King burst out with a blinding black radiance. "Shit. He's going to explode." Lin Ming was shocked. An existence like the Asura King was completely composed of energy. With a thought, it could blow itself up, and the speed of this was extremely quick. There wasn't even an instant to react, this was impossible to guard against. But at this critical moment, the magic cube Saintess' eyes shined with a severe light. All around the Asura King, time began to wind down. Sound, energy, everything began stretching out to infinity. Time Law's concept of stagnation. Under the control of the magic cube Saintess, for a short period of time she could display the concept of stagnation to the extreme, causing time to nearly come to a standstill. Cut. The magic cube Saintess waved her hand and translucent white ripples appeared around her. At this moment, she finally used true essence. This true essence was not earth-shattering in any way, it was only the true essence of the 7th stage of life destruction, and also the limit of the energy contained within Yang Little Moon's body. Regardless of how powerful the magic cube Saintess' divine soul was, how incredible her battle spirit was, or how profound her comprehension of the laws was, she could only draw out true essence from the body she was possessing. This was because her own mortal body no longer existed and her soul could not contain heaven and earth origin energy. This was the reason that her strength was doomed to be greatly affected. Puff puff puff. Ripples of white energy slashed down on the Asura King's body, sending flesh and blood flying everywhere. At the same time, the magic cube Saintess' battle spirit fused into the surrounding magma, turning it into countless swords that pierced through the Asura King's body. This was truly what one called torn to shreds by 10,000 swords. In that moment, the Asura King's mortal body was like a ripped bag of blood. It continued to profusely bleed, and all of this blood was gathered up by the magic cube Saintess and turned into blood beads. Due to the absolute suppression of time laws, the Asura King was unable to resist at all. In fact, even its thoughts were incomparably slow. It could only allow itself to be slaughtered on the chopping block. The Asura King was also completely cut off from contacting its core of energy within its body by the magic cube Saintess. Thus, it was also impossible for it to explode. The magic cube Saintess wiped her spatial ring and took out a top-grade Saint artifact furnace. This was Yang Little Moon's fire pattern furnace. After her body was possessed by the magic cube Saintess, everything in her possession could also be used by the magic cube Saintess. Receive. The magic cube Saintess flung out her hand and the fire pattern furnace spun outwards. The Asura King's body and all of the blood beads were completely sucked into the furnace. Then, a vast amount of fire origin energy surged out from the surrounding magma, towards the fire pattern furnace. For a time, great flames crested around the furnace. Faintly, very faintly, Lin Ming could hear the pitiful cries emitted by the Asura King. After absorbing the Azure Dragon Marrow, the Asura King's vitality was just far too powerful. At the same time that this brought it a greater combat strength, it also meant that it would have to suffer an even greater pain before dying. Within the conflagration of flames, the screams became quieter and quieter before completely vanishing. The Asura King's physical body, and the flesh and blood essence it absorbed from the disciples of the 4 God Beast clans, were completely melted away, leaving behind only the blood marrow of the supreme dragon bone. This blood marrow actually formed a small azure dragon within the fire pattern furnace that flew around the flames, cute and lifelike. Besides the dragon marrow essence, there was also a dark red bead within the fire pattern furnace. This was the purest mystic energy left behind by the Asura King condensed into pill form. Even an ordinary Mystic Realm demon had the unique laws of the God Beast Mystic Realm inscribed into the Mystic Realm energy within its body. The first time that a genius like Yang Little Moon had absorbed the energy of a Mystic Realm demon, it was equal to 10 days of meditating over the laws. The older a Mystic Realm demon was, the more laws it would have within it, much less something like the Asura King. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that even if one completely disregarded the Dragon Marrow essence that the Asura King absorbed, just the Mystic Realm energy within the Asura King was already a priceless worldly treasure. This sort of Mystic Realm energy could not be found in the outside Divine Realm. But even though there were actually many Asura Kings that existed in the vast and boundless God Beast Mystic Realm, the problem was that only low-level disciples were able to enter. It was simply far too difficult for them to stay alive in the presence of an Asura King, much less hunt one down. In just one incense stick of time, the magic cube Saintess had completely finished her process of refining. The fire pattern furnace shot open and a black-red bead shot upwards, forming a sparkling rainbow-hued cloud around it that caused even the surrounding heaven and earth origin energy to be stirred up. Only the birth of a transcendent divine pill would produce such a phenomenon. But in truth, what the magic cube Saintess refined was not a pill, but the condensed form of the Asura King's energy and the Dragon Marrow essence. After putting away the fire pattern furnace, the magic cube Saintess took this black-red pill in her hand. The smooth pill was like jade to the touch. On the surface of the pill was the image of an azure dragon that wrapped around the entire circumference until the head and tail met again. This was due to the condensed supreme dragon marrow essence. Novel being at. One couldn't judge this azure dragon by how faint it was. The truth was that the space within it was extremely mysterious. The total amount of dragon marrow essence that was compressed into this space had reached an absurdly terrifying degree. The magic cube saintess glanced over this pill for a moment and then tossed it backwards, throwing it directly towards Lin Ming. For you. As the saintess spoke these two simple words, they were completely different from her voice in the beginning. When the magic cube saintess first spoke out, her words dripped with killing intent and her tone was callous and indifferent. It was similar to the laws of the world that controlled heavenly retribution. Her words had given off a feeling like nature itself, unbiased, merciless, treating everything in this world as equal to ants. But as she spoke these two words now, her voice was actually as pleasant as a mountain stream, pleasant and delectable to the ears. Lin Ming quickly received the bead, feeling extremely flattered at the moment. Although he had always been together with this saintess ever since he obtained the magic cube, he actually had no idea just how she viewed him. Towards this woman that knew all of his secrets and whose strength far surpassed his, he always felt a tinge of fear and awe. I have absorbed 80% of the remaining supreme dragon bone marrow blood in order to regain consciousness. As for this blood marrow pill, you may take it as compensation. The amount of blood marrow is around the same. As for the strength of the Asura King itself, you can consider it interest. The magic cube saintess had only absorbed the blood marrow within the supreme dragon bone, she hadn't absorbed the bone itself. It had no use to her anyway, thus she didn't bother with it. The dragon bone was left over to be fused into Lin Ming and used to strengthen his bones. The magic cube saintess was a soul form. Blood essence and blood energy were useful in helping her recover. Before this, whenever the magic cube absorbed the blood essence of masters, that was all because of the magic cube saintess. In other words, the magic cube itself did not need blood essence. The magic cube saintess had used this method to tell and encourage Lin Ming to go and seek the blood essence of powerhouses. Of course, when he was in the lower realms, even the blood essence of Yang Yun only had a tiny, imperceptible use to her. But now, in the God-Beast mystic realm, after obtaining so much dragon marrow essence, the magic cube saintess had finally regained consciousness. Lin Ming, right. This isn't the first time that we've met. My name is Mo Eversnow. I am the saintess of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. The woman lightly said as she suddenly looked towards Lin Ming. Tip, you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1063 Another Dual Cultivator. Chapter 1063 Another Dual Cultivator. Mo Eversnow. Lin Ming was dazed for some time. Ever since he had obtained the magic cube, there had been countless riddles he couldn't figure out. He had sought the blood essence of increasingly powerful martial artists for the magic cube to swallow, in order to not just obtain the memory fragments within, but also because he subconsciously desired to know the secrets that surrounded the magic cube. The magic cube was the most fundamental cause of Lin Ming's rise. Although, after reaching the Ziontian and revolving core realms, the magic cube in truth wasn't too helpful to Lin Ming. A great portion of why Lin Ming had his current achievements was because of his own hard work, effort, and perseverance. But, it was undoubtedly true that if he didn't have the magic cube, he would likely still be a small martial artist in the Sky Fortune Kingdom. His cultivation would at most be at the Pulse Condensation or Hushan realm, that would have been his limit. It was the magic cube that had given Lin Ming the initial boost he needed to overcome the most difficult early times and also his lack of martial talent. Lin Ming could confirm that the magic cube was one of the most priceless treasures of the universe. What he had been trying to answer all this time was what the magic cube was and also what other functions it had besides preserving memory fragments. Why had it attracted the attention of so many Divine Realm Supreme Elders to fight for it? Many of these questions circled in Lin Ming's mind, but he didn't open his mouth to ask. This was because he didn't know what Mo Eversnow's plans were. Although she had borrowed his strength to restore her consciousness, he had no idea just what she would do now. Perhaps she would even just occupy Yang Little Moon's body and take away the magic cube. If this was what she planned to do, then it would be stupid for Lin Ming to ask about the magic cube's origins. She might try to silence everyone that knew about the magic cube, and Lin Ming wouldn't be able to resist her. He wasn't even able to deal with the Asura King, much less Mo Eversnow. Mo Eversnow seemed to see the fear and dread in Lin Ming's heart. She said in a soft and calming voice, "You do not need to be nervous. Although I have been slumbering in the magic cube for 50,000 years, my consciousness has still had a spark of wakefulness. I have already been aware since you first touched the magic cube. My divine soul has been grievously wounded, and I need the power of blood essence to restore myself. I can only hope that a powerhouse will help me seek blood essence to help restore the strength of my divine soul. Of course, if it is a powerhouse that I raised myself, then that would be the best. Only then would I be able to trust them. I have been satisfied in your actions and character so far. You move courageously and you can also kill decisively. You do not make mistakes, nor are you soft when you shouldn't be. At the same time, you aren't heartless either. You know to repay graciousness, and you have your own bottom line. And most importantly, your will is firm and you seek the peak of martial arts with your entire heart and soul. You're quite good. Originally I didn't have much hope in your talent. But, I never thought you would give me such a wonderful surprise in this aspect. For you to reach this step as a martial artist from the lower realms, that is simply a miracle. As Mo Eversnow spoke, Lin Ming was able to glean a great deal of information from her words. Every time he entered the space within the magic cube to absorb a soul fragment, that had been because Mo Eversnow had led him and guided him to the magic cube, as a way to have him search for the blood essence of masters. Now that Miss Mo has awoken, may I inquire as to your plans? Lin Ming tentatively asked. After he said these words, Mo Eversnow took a deep breath. In that moment, an icy chill spread out through the air, even stopping the magma around them as if the entire surrounding area would be sealed in ice. I will rebuild my flesh and blood body and completely restore myself. In addition, for all of those that dared to move against my verdant feather holy lands, I will kill every single one of them. And that Tiun Mingzi, I will destroy his soul and scatter it to the wind. As Mo Eversnow spoke, her two beautiful pupils gleamed with thick killing intent. Lin Ming felt his heart skip a beat. Although Mo Eversnow was ethereal and lofty, as if she had never been tainted by the world, the truth was that she was actually ruthless and decisive, a person who distinctly knew grudges and gratitude. This was also an understandable matter. The past verdant feather holy lands was likely commanded by Mo Eversnow. Even if it wasn't, she was at least one of the high-level figures there. Tiun Mingzi, how strong is he? Lin Ming couldn't help but ask. Without a doubt, Tiun Mingzi was that black-clothed man that had led 10,000 Divine Realm Supreme Elders to assault the verdant feather holy lands. Finally, Mo Eversnow had been forced to sacrifice her own soul to make a final strike with the magic cube. One could see from this alone just how strong he was. Early World King. Mo Eversnow slowly and clearly said. But as these words fell into Lin Ming's ears, he sucked in a deep breath in response. Although he had already faintly guessed this, he was still truly shocked at hearing Mo Eversnow's confirmation. A World King powerhouse. Between a Holy Lord and a World King, there was a nearly impassable divide. Within the entire ancient Phoenix clan's 100 million years of history, there had never been a World King. Of course, this was ultimately because the ancient Phoenix clan was only a human sect with the ancient Phoenix bloodline transplanted within them. They were not true descendants of the Phoenix. A true god-beast descendant, who knew how many of these characters existed in the entire divine realm. There weren't many god-beasts to begin with, and each one was an incomparably proud and haughty existence. How could they possibly deign to mate with a human? And if there truly was a child born from such a union, this sort of person could truly be called the most terrifying talent in the world. This was because a god-beast symbolized the strongest physical body and compatibility with laws. But humans had a deep and profound ability to learn and also the ability to study and train in martial arts. Such a person would have unimaginable achievements. That was his cultivation 50,000 years ago. If it's now, then shouldn't it be even higher? Lin Ming subconsciously asked. Yes. But 50,000 years ago, Tiun Mingzi didn't have his own great world. He only controlled a peripheral medium world. He could not be called a true great world king, but should be called an ordinary world king. As Mo Eversnow spoke, Lin Ming was surprised for a moment before immediately understanding. Although there were only 3,000 great world kings in the divine realm, this was because there were only 3,000 great worlds in the divine realm. In the vast divine realm, there were constantly new world kings being born. They were almost always at a saturated state. But a newly born world king wouldn't necessarily be able to obtain their own world. They would have to wait for an old world king to die, or perhaps even simply defeat them and take over their lands. But wanting to defeat an old world king with a deep background was easier said than done. These world kings had lifespans that were calculated using millions as the base unit. There were even some extremely powerful world kings that could live for tens of millions of years. The reason the divine realm had so many world kings was not that world kings were like cabbages that could be bought on the street. Rather, it was because the divine realm was simply too broad and endless. The total number of lives in the divine realm was incalculable. Moreover, these world kings all lived incomparably long lives, lives that were millions or even tens of millions of years. After accumulating for such a long period of time, this was why there were so many of them. Then Miss Mo's boundary is, Lin Ming hesitated before asking this. He really did want to know this. In the past I was only a half-step world king. All considered, I was only a holy lord. I was stranded in that realm for a long time and not able to break through for a reason, and that was because, as Mo Eversnow spoke to her, she looked towards Lin Ming. Her following words left him dumbstruck. Because I dual cultivated body and energy. What? Dual cultivated body and energy. Lin Ming's eyes widened and he gazed at Mo Eversnow with astonishment. She dual cultivated body and energy, just like him. Of the divine realm geniuses, even if one was an extreme talent of their generation, there was an extremely small number that would fumble their way through dual body and energy cultivation. This was because after the rules of the heavens and earth changed, it was simply far too difficult to follow this path. For many people, the gains just weren't equal to the losses. Even if one were the chosen amongst all chosen prides of heaven, they still weren't an exception. Xiao Daoji, Crimson Strife Cloud, Huo Burning Heaven, and even the ancient dragon clan's two world kings, none of them had dual cultivated body and energy. In fact, a major reason Lin Ming had stepped onto this road of dual cultivation was because he didn't know just how difficult it would be at the start. by the time he began to realize it, it was already too late as he had begun to open the 8 inner hidden gates. However, it was impossible that Mo Eversnow didn't know this. For those that knew just how difficult it was to dual cultivating body and energy and still chose that route, there were only two possibilities. The first possibility was that they were an idiot potato who had bitten off more than they could chew. And the second possibility was, they were an unrivaled genius, with a talent so high that it was unbelievable. Without a doubt, Mo Eversnow belonged to the latter. Otherwise, there was no way she could have become the saintess of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. From the way she spoke, this Verdant Feather Holy Lands was also an extremely high holy land, possibly even a World King level holy land. This was also reasonable. Otherwise, how could something like the magic cube fall into the hands of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands? And, the reason Mo Eversnow hadn't become a World King before her physical body was destroyed was not that she lacked talent. But rather, it was because she was too young. She was the saintess of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands, not the ruler. The Verdant Feather Holy Lands should have had someone older and high-ranked as a decision-maker, possibly even some highest elder. And, Mo Eversnow could only be considered a junior compared to them. But even so, a junior like her was able to cultivate to the half-step World King realm, her talent could be imagined. All of these thoughts flashed through Lin Ming's mind. I really wonder just what bloodline family background she originates from, or what type of special physique she had. Lin Ming wondered. He didn't believe that an ordinary bloodline could reach such a degree of talent. Lin Ming was also constantly searching for ways to improve his own bloodline and body. Mo Eversnow didn't seem to have any intention of speaking about her glorious and wondrous past. She said, Lin Ming, I never thought that you would also step onto the road of dual body and energy cultivation. Moreover, you've also managed to come this far. This road you have chosen will be extremely difficult. I only want to ask you a question. Do you still intend to continue walking down the path of dual body and energy cultivation? Lin Ming froze for a moment before firmly nodding. Giving up all of his previous efforts was not his style. Moreover, since Mo Eversnow had also chosen dual body and energy cultivation, that meant that this road was possible. And, the further one walked down this road, the more benefits there would be. The only problem was that it was an incomparably difficult path to take. Since there had been someone else that could try it, then why couldn't he? Lin Ming wondered just what boundary Mo Eversnow's dual body and energy cultivation reached. Had she managed to open the legendary 9 stars of the Dao Palace? Good. Then I will help you. Mo Eversnow said, short and to the point. At a novel being at. Help me. Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. These words of Mo Eversnow's clearly contained another meaning. She didn't plan to take away the magic cube. In other words, she actually planned to stay with him for a very long period of time. Otherwise, how could she possibly help Lin Ming complete his dual body and energy cultivation? In addition, there was also another, more subtle meaning. The reason Mo Eversnow had helped Lin Ming in the past was to help restore her own consciousness. And now that she continued to help him, there was definitely some other intention. Lin Ming's eyes widened. Are you planning to have me help you take revenge? Mo Eversnow was slightly stunned for a moment and then spared Lin Ming an appreciative look. Smart boy. Good, you are correct. Do you have the courage to do so? Tip, you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1064 The Bad Luck Dragon 1. Chapter 1064 The Bad Luck Dragon 1. In this world, there was no good that came for no reason and also no evil that came for no reason. Although today was the first time that Mo Eversnow and Lin Ming had spoken together, they were two individuals that had been aware of the other's existence for 15 years now, and were linked together through the magic cube. Their fates could be said to be inexorably linked together. Without Mo Eversnow, Lin Ming would not have been able to use the magic cube even if he obtained it, and thus he wouldn't have his present achievements. Without Lin Ming, it was unknown just when Mo Eversnow would have ever recovered her consciousness. If someone weak tried to help her, it would be impossible for them to find enough blood essence to bring her back. But if it were someone strong, they might try to delve into the secrets of the magic cube themselves and take it for their own. They could even knock down the defenseless Mo Eversnow and use her to refine a magic weapon or pill. After all, she was an unrivaled genius who had once been a half-step world king, and her divine soul was extremely valuable. Moreover, there were many special characteristics about her soul. Only someone like Lin Ming, whom she had raised for all this time, had the possibility of helping her. Through these 15 years of observing him, she understood his behavior and personality. He was fair and courageous, and knew to repay debts. She could only trust in someone like him. However, wanting to find someone like Lin Ming was easier said than done. Thus, Mo Eversnow and Lin Ming's accidental encounter could be called Lin Ming's luck and also Mo Eversnow's luck. Lin Ming thought for a moment and then said, Miss Mo, the reason I can come this far today is your kindness. Whether it is revenge or reforming your mortal body, I will do my best to help you. Much less, you are also directing me in my dual body and energy cultivation, so how could I possibly refuse you? As Lin Ming spoke, all of this was based on his own view of morality and justice. He simply didn't care about Tian Mingzi's boundary or just what background he had. It was as if he hadn't committed to taking revenge on a world king, but rather was speaking about some insignificant character. You're quite confident in yourself. However, you indeed have the capital to be confident. In the magic cube, I've already seen everything happening to you. With your current talent and also the supreme dragon bone, you now have the qualifications to aspire to the throne of a world king. But, even that isn't enough. This is because you are tens of thousands of years behind Tian Mingzi, and also, in terms of talent, the Tian Mingzi of the past also stood out amongst all chosen prides of heaven. As for me, before I reform my mortal body, my strength will be extremely limited. I cannot use true essence and can only rely on my battle spirit and laws to fight. At most I can contend with the weakest of Divine Lord Realm martial artists. In the past, when Mo Eversnow was at her highest point, she had only been a half-step world king. Moreover, a great portion of her strength originated from her dual body and energy cultivation. Now that she had no body and she was unable to channel true essence, she was only able to rely on her will and use of laws to attack. With all of her losses, it was already extraordinary that she could compare with the Divine Lord powerhouse. As for the reason why Mo Eversnow was able to easily kill the Asura King just now, that was because the Asura King's highest level of strength was only equal to a divine transformation genius. Then, the Asura King had also suffered serious injuries and was in its weakest state due to having crossed its demonic tribulation. When it died, its strength was only comparable to the most ordinary and weak of divine transformation martial artists, thus why Mo Eversnow was able to kill it with such ease. Lin Ming nodded. He had an approximate idea of how the situation was. To restore Mo Eversnow's physical body was easier said than done. Seizing another person's body was naturally a bad idea. This was because if one's soul and body didn't match up, then it would be difficult to amount to anything. As for reforming her own flesh and blood, that was far more difficult. Mo Eversnow said, your greatest advantage is that no one knows of you. Tian Mingzi likely thinks that I have died already. I will slowly help you complete the 8 inner hidden gates and pull out your greatest strength and potential. When I trained in dual body and energy cultivation, I collected a great deal of knowledge and experience. Not just that, but before the Verdant Feather Holy Lands was destroyed, I left behind some resources and hid them very well. Only I can access these resources. I was originally planning to save them to attack the World King Realm and the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, but now I no longer have a need for them. I will give you these resources to help you impact the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. Then, once you reach the Divine Lord Realm, your strength will be heaven-shaking. Mo Eversnow's words caused Lin Ming's heart to move. Resources left over from the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. It was unknown just what sort of heavenly materials were included in that. Their value and preciousness could be imagined. However, even Mo Eversnow hadn't been able to open the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. One could see from this just how difficult it was. Fairy Feng and Huo Violentstone had both told him that after the laws of the world changed, trying to reach the 9 stars of the Dao Palace was the same as completely defying the will of the heavens. And now, it seemed that such words were not an exaggeration. Wanting to dual cultivate in body and energy was just too difficult. Someone like Mu Eversnow could truly be called a heaven-defying genius. Lin Ming said, Miss Mo, did you only complete the 8 inner hidden gates? I completed the 8 inner hidden gates extremely early on. Then, I used 1,000 years to accumulate the resources and strength I needed to impact the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. It should be said that I had already taken a step into the threshold of the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. As long as I had another 100 years I would have been successful. But alas, I fell short. As Mo Eversnow spoke to her, she sighed. Lin Ming was left staring back, nonplussed. He had no idea just what sort of monstrous genius Mo Eversnow had been in the past. Listening to the meaning behind her words, if it weren't for the fact that she had to expend a massive amount of time and energy cultivating the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, she would have already become a world king. If she had succeeded, then the War of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands 50,000 years ago might have been another scene altogether. Very well. Let us leave first. We can continue discussing these matters in the future. Mo Eversnow said as she prepared to leave the Sea of Magma. But, Lin Ming dithered for a bit before saying, Miss Mo, I have been thinking about how today's matters will end. The 4 great clans have lost far too many geniuses, and the Dragon Bone is also in my possession. If we leave the God Beast Mystic Realm, we will inevitably have to pass through the 4 God Beast clans' transmission array. It is definitely impossible to conceal the truth of the Dragon Bone, and there is also Yang Little Moon. As Lin Ming saw Mo Eversnow appear with Yang Little Moon's body, he figured that she should be okay. But, he was still a bit unsure. And there was also the Supreme Dragon Bone. That was far too important. The 4 clans had sacrificed so many people for the Supreme Dragon Bone, so how could they resign themselves to allowing Lin Ming to have sole possession of it? The ancient dragon clan might even represent the other clans to force the ancient phoenix clan with all sorts of reasons, and might even have some of their genius disciples accuse Lin Ming of doing unsavory things so that he would be forced to share the dragon bone. And let alone the other three god-beast clans, would the ancient phoenix clan sit idly by and allow Lin Ming to keep the dragon bone by himself? Even if the Huo family supported him, there was still the Xiao family and the Huang family. Both of those families had lost a great deal of people. With so many sacrifices, how could they allow Lin Ming to eat up all the advantages by himself? Novel been at. As for Lin Ming absorbing the entire supreme dragon bone now, that was simply unrealistic. With Lin Ming's current cultivation, wanting to swallow up this supreme dragon bone was too difficult. In simpler terms, he couldn't absorb it. This was a 1,000-foot dragon bone. Even if he could absorb the entire dragon bone, he would be standing on top of the wave of attention after it was discovered when he left this mystic realm. There were many matters that he simply wasn't able to explain. If too many issues got involved and some of his secrets were exposed, then the consequences would be calamitous. Mo Eversnow said, "Lang Little Moon's divine soul has been sealed by me. As long as it is me occupying this body, then no harm shall come to her. As for her memories, I can wipe away any portion I wish. I can make it so that she only remembers you fleeing the battlefield with her. As for the Supreme Dragon Bone and the Asura King Pill, that is even easier. Don't be in a hurry and absorb them now to prevent anyone from noticing anything. Then you can store them in the magic cube space. Not even a World King will be able to discover anything strange with you. Once you return to the ancient Phoenix clan, look for any chance you can to leave and go adventuring. At that time, you can absorb the Supreme Dragon Bone and I can also lead you to find the resources I left behind in the past. I will have you reach the Divine Sea in a single go. Then, after you reach the Divine Sea, you can hide your aura in your own minor dimension. It will be extremely difficult for anyone to probe into you." As Mo Eversnow spoke, Lin Ming was floored. The magic cube space can store items. Yes. The magic cube is unfathomable, it simply doesn't seem like something that should exist in this universe. Its inner space is something that not even a World King can understand or see through. That's great. Lin Ming let out a sigh of relief, overjoyed. Ever since he stole away the Supreme Dragon Bone, he had been worrying about how to bring it out with him, but now everything was resolved. Let's go then. As Lin Ming just spoke, Mo Eversnow's eyebrow pricked up. Hey. Hold on. Someone has come down here. Just a single person. It should be a disciple of the ancient dragon clan. Mo Eversnow's divine sense was remarkably powerful. Even in this sea of magma, with the countless waves of heat and energy causing disturbance to the senses, she could still easily investigate everything within the range of 1,000 miles without any problems at all. Millimeter. Ancient Dragon Clan. Lin Ming paused. If there was only one person, then it was likely Dragon 1. Lin Ming's thoughts were correct. The one who came down here was indeed Dragon 1. Dragon 1 wasn't adept in earth laws or fire laws. The only reason he had been able to come down this far was entirely due to his deep cultivation. Originally, with the Asura King opening the road for him, he was able to save his strength. But just before he reached the magma sea, a terrifying explosion buried him alive. A massive pressure pushed down on him right afterwards. All the shattered rock and soil collapsing on him nearly caused him to vomit blood. At that time, Dragon 1 nearly gave up. But, for this supreme dragon bone he had burned 20% of his blood essence, consumed 2 9 revolving dragon pills, and had even personally slaughtered many of his junior apprentice brothers. The price he paid was simply too great. If he couldn't obtain the dragon bone, then his fate once he returned to the clan would be beyond miserable. Just the crime of killing his fellow clansmen was nearly unpardonable. He no longer had a choice to retreat. He could only succeed, he could not be defeated here. But whether it was the Asura King or the mysterious existence that stole away the dragon bone, Dragon 1 had to admit that he wasn't either of their matches. He only had one method of success, and that was to take advantage of the chaos and profit. When the Asura King and the unknown existence were mutually wounded in their battle, he would sneak in and steal away the supreme dragon bone. Thus, Dragon 1 was extremely careful as he moved forwards. He concealed his entire aura. In the ancient dragon clan, there was a branch called the Dragon Turtle branch. The Dragon Turtle was also known as the Big Sea, Lord of the Underground. It was one of the 9 sons of the dragon and had the head of a dragon and the body of a turtle. And, Dragon 1 just happened to have a massive amount of the Dragon Turtle God Beast's bloodline in his body. With this bloodline he was able to use a type of turtle hiding technique called the turtle shrinking art. It was an extremely powerful cloaking type martial skill. Even an ordinary Divine Lord realm powerhouse would have difficulty discovering Dragon 1's location. As for the Asura King, it wasn't at the Divine Lord realm, so it certainly couldn't discover him. This was also the greatest reason why Dragon 1 was willing to risk his life and come down here to steal away the dragon bone. However, what he never imagined was that he would encounter Mo Eversnow, someone whose divine sense was hundreds, if not thousands of times sharper than a Divine Lord realm powerhouse. It could only be said that when people have a stroke of bad luck, they could scald themselves to death just by drinking cold water. Tip: you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1065 The wicked cannot be saved from their sins. Chapter 1065 The wicked cannot be saved from their sins. In the surging flows of magma, the passive Dragon 1 was like a tiny scurrying mouse. His protective true essence was lowered to the weakest state possible, and he didn't produce the slightest sound or energy fluctuation as he went forwards. Even the red light of the magma twisted around him, causing him to be hidden in a constant blind spot. The turtle shrinking art was truly the #1 concealment technique of the ancient dragon clan. It wasn't much worse than Lin Ming's own grand mist space. I felt some intense true essence fluctuations before now. That should be an indication that the fight was very intense, but not they've slowed down and nearly stopped. I have no idea what the situation is like right now. That unknown existence must be weaker than the Asura King, otherwise it wouldn't have hidden around waiting for its chance in the chaos. I estimate that its strength is much weaker than the combined strength of my ancient dragon clan's 36 disciples, much less something like the Asura King. However, since it decided to escape downwards and drill into the ground, that must mean that it has some sort of advantage in this environment where it complements the laws here better. Since this is its own battleground, it must have some chance of contending with the wounded Asura King. If both of them have managed to wound each other, then that's my chance. All sorts of thoughts passed through Dragon 1's mind. There were definitely certain parts of his analysis that were correct, but no matter how much he speculated, his guesses would never have wandered over to Lin Ming. At a novel being attacked. Dragon 1 grit his teeth and ruthlessly swallowed down the third 9 revolving dragon pill. This pill was a wondrous miracle pill meant to save his life. However, it wasn't instant, it was a slow process that required time. If the healing process of the pill was interrupted, it would cause a great deal of the medicinal efficacy to fade away. When Dragon 1 had swallowed 2 of these pills, he had been injured afterwards, causing their effects to be majorly weakened. I've already restored about 60% of my strength. If I burn another 10% of my blood essence, I can restore myself to my peak condition and fight with everything I have. However, the Asura King has already absorbed the Azure Dragon Divine Bone Marrow, so its resilience and recovery ability is beyond extraordinary. I must be extra careful, millimeter. What's that? Someone's here. Dragon 1 was shocked and he immediately focused all his strength on the turtle shrinking art and hid himself. After hiding all of his aura fluctuations, he completely blended in with the magma around him. However, Dragon 1's immediate reaction fell into Mo Eversnow's pupils where it was reflected for Lin Ming to see. Lin Ming felt as if Dragon 1 was nothing but a little mouse that was acting slightly cautious. It was a bit funny. How do you want to deal with him? Mo Eversnow asked. Although she had used the words deal with him, the truth was that the moment she spoke, the change in the air around her already indicated her intentions. Although Mo Eversnow was as lofty and high as a fairy from heaven, her heart was ruthless and decisive when it came to killing off any troubles that arose. Lin Ming thought for a moment. Facing Dragon 1 this time, he certainly wouldn't speak of anything like kindness or benevolence. Earlier, if it hadn't been for the disciples of the other God Beast clans arriving, Dragon 1 would have already tried to kill Lin Ming and Lang Little Moon. Moreover, this person was too conniving and cruel. Although he seemed like an amiable and compassionate elder senior apprentice brother on the surface, the truth was that he was sadistic and merciless, bold and with overly great ambitions. Dragon 1 was the type that would resort to any despicable method to achieve his own personal goals. This sort of person was the same as a rabid tiger and also a deadly viper. Leaving him in this world would only mean disaster, and he might even try to bite Lin Ming in the future. After all, the past conflict had been remembered by Dragon 1. Although Dragon 1 might say he wouldn't bear a grudge, he would likely wait for some prime opportunity in the future to enact his revenge. Lin Ming had already learned his lesson with Yang Boyan. After combining all of these reasons, Lin Ming certainly didn't have any intentions of letting Dragon 1 go. When cutting the weeds, he had to tear out the roots. Lin Ming said, I would like to ask Miss Mo to assist in killing him. My current condition is only 10% of my peak state. Even if Dragon 1 is exhausted, I am still not his match. Since I've already stepped on his face, I might as well crush him to death in the meantime. Good, that's also my intent. Mo Eversnow waved her hand and a ray of bright light wrapped around Lin Ming. Both of them flew straight towards Dragon 1. Millimeter. They've discovered me. That's impossible. Dragon 1 frowned. He had 120% confidence in his turtle shrinking art. Unless one had a Divine Lord realm cultivation, it was impossible to discover him. Hey, it isn't the Asura King. Their true essence fluctuations are very weak, both of them are at the 7th stage of life destruction. Life destruction realm, humans. They must be disciples of the other 3 clans, but how would they appear here? Were they also planning to try and profit in the chaos? As Dragon 1 realized this, he immediately became incensed. These bastards actually dared to come and steal food from the tiger's mouth and pass his own bottom line. The supreme dragon bone was something he must possess at all costs. If these people tried to steal it away from him, that was the same as trying to take his own life. If you was Xiao Ping, Qianbai, or Argent Gale, then I might fear you a bit because I would worry that you would alert the Asura King. But since it's just you 2 7th stage life destruction nobodies, I will just solve both of you right here lest you ruin my work. As Dragon 1 thought to hear, a ferocious light flashed on his face. He didn't retreat and instead flew straight towards Lin Ming and Mo Eversnow. He soon discovered that there were only two people, a young man and woman, both wearing garb of the ancient Phoenix clan. Lin Ming. Yang Little Moon. So it was you two. Dragon 1 didn't discover anything strange about Yang Little Moon. This was because Mo Eversnow had completely adapted to Yang Little Moon's body and the terrifying aura she revealed before was no longer as evident. Moreover, Dragon 1 had already seen Lin Ming and Yang Little Moon traveling together. And now, seeing them appear together, no matter how rich his imagination was, he wouldn't ever think that the Yang Little Moon in front of him was no longer the Yang Little Moon of the past. Dragon 1 no longer hid his appearance. He only hid his aura and appeared right in front of Lin Ming and Mo Eversnow. Even though Lin Ming could clearly see Dragon 1 in front of him, he still wasn't able to find him with his divine sense. Lin Ming couldn't help but praise this type of exquisite camouflage technique. I never thought I'd bump into the two of you here. You two really have some ability. Not only did you fellows manage to live through the chaos of that battle, but you even have the guts to chase me down here. Dragon 1's eyes swept over Lin Ming before focusing on Yang Little Moon. A sinister smile crept over his face. Before, he had been continually rolled over by the Asura King, now he got to experience rolling over others himself. He beat, since you've come, you two can forget about leaving. Yang Little Moon, I really must thank you. You personally delivered to me your perfect ancient phoenix bloodline and primordial yin. I will kindly accept your good intentions. Since ancient times, the union of the dragon and phoenix has always been an auspicious sign. Pillaging all of your energy will be a great benefit to me. In truth, Dragon 1 himself had a perfect dragon clan bloodline, but his primordial yang was long gone. Even if it wasn't, the bloodline strength he gave away wouldn't be too much. Moreover, Dragon 1 was the aggressor in this situation. As long as he locked in his own yang essence and used special techniques designed to ravage others and steal away their primordial yin, the advantages he obtained would be far greater than the negligible dragon bloodline he would lose. As Lin Ming heard Dragon 1 speak, he shivered. His gaze on Dragon 1 became the same as if he were looking at a dead man walking. Although Dragon 1's words were aimed at Yang Little Moon, Mo Eversnow was currently occupying her body. Dragon 1's words were the same as profaning Mo Eversnow. Wasn't that just asking to die? Really, the wicked cannot be saved from their sins. Lin Ming whispered to himself. But at this time, Dragon 1 already moved. I'll send you off first. Dragon 1 shouted out and thrust his palm forwards. Behind him, the phantom of a dragon turtle appeared. This dragon turtle had 4 thick limbs and bore a stone tablet on its shell. It gave off an incomparably heavy and solemn feeling, as if it were shouldering the stars. And in front of this dragon turtle was also a 5-clawed golden dragon, its entire body shining with a golden light, making all who saw it be blinded by the brightness. This Dragon 1 actually had a mixed bloodline. He had a dual bloodline strength originating from both the dragon turtle and the 5-clawed golden dragon. This was also the reason why the ancient dragon clan martial artists were so powerful. It was because the dragon race was great and varied, and thus there was more bloodline diversity. By mixing these together, the martial artists of the ancient dragon clan were able to obtain greater strength and more advantages. Dragon 1 punched out with his fists, causing the magma to roll around him. But at this time, Mo Eversnow's eyes flashed with a chilling light. Break. Lightly speaking this word, Mo Eversnow's voice regained that feeling of cold-hearted indifference, as heartless and emotionless as the great Tao itself. This sonic wave carried with it the power of Mo Eversnow's will. It smashed against Dragon 1's fist light. Without a single sound, Dragon 1's fist light seemed as if it were swallowed up into a black hole, vanishing without a trace. Millimeter. Shock and surprise flashed through Dragon 1's face. How? He was floored in that moment. This aura, this feeling, this was absolutely not something that the 7th stage life destruction Yang Little Moon could possess. In that split second, Dragon 1 no longer had time to think about all this. All he saw was Yang Little Moon raise her hand and flick a finger at him. Although she wasn't fast, her movements contained the profound mysteries of the Time Laws. In just this finger flick, time seemed to rapidly pass before his eyes. It was impossible for Dragon 1 to avoid it. What Mo Eversnow used was still Yang Little Moon's 7th stage life destruction true essence. But underneath the power of her battle spirit, it had condensed to an unimaginable degree. The lethality of this true essence had reached countless times what Yang Little Moon could ever hope to accomplish. A beam of light passed through the air, beautiful and radiant. But, Dragon 1 could feel a thick aura of death coming from it. This light will kill me. This idea suddenly appeared in Dragon 1's mind, making him feel as if his soul had crashed into an icy lake. To an extreme talent like him, death was absolutely the most terrifying matter. Ha! In that life or death moment, Dragon 1 shouted out and punched at the beam of light. However, with a light popping sound, Dragon 1's fist was directly penetrated by that light. That beam of light shot back out of his fist, bringing with it a rain of blood as it continued towards Dragon 1's head. All of this happened in an extremely brief period. But as this scene fell into Dragon 1's eyes, this brief moment felt as if it had been extended to infinity. This was also the effect of Mo Eversnow's time laws. For what seemed like countless years, Dragon 1 could clearly feel the god of death approach him a single step at a time. This sort of experience could drive anyone mad. Su. The shining beam of light pierced through the point between Dragon 1's eyes. A fatal hole appeared in Dragon 1's head, gushing with blood. His eyes widened, filled with disbelief and unwillingness. You aren't Yang, little moon. Dragon 1 opened his mouth to say. But, with his brain twisted apart, his words came out completely distorted. Mo Eversnow waved her jade-like finger and Dragon 1's body shook before exploding into a fog of blood. His blood essence was completely taken away by Mo Eversnow. Whoosh. Dragon 1's spatial ring also flew out and fell into Lin Ming's hand. As Lin Ming swept through it with his mind, he was impressed. The grade of this ring was no lower than that of the extreme violet ring, and there were also countless resources piled up inside. This was the spatial ring of the ancient dragon clan's top number 1 junior disciple. Tip, you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters.
I can't carry anymore. I am returning to town. Once the captain of King Liaric's army, I left only to honor my land and my king. No man has a greater love for his king than I had for mine, even as I drove my blade through his dark and corrupted heart. I don't have enough spirit.
Martial World. Chapter 1066 Treasures of the Dead. Chapter 1066 Treasures of the Dead. Lin Ming hadn't had enough time to explore the specific inventory within the spatial ring when all of Dragon 1's blood essence was formed into a blood bead underneath the towing of Mo Eversnow's thoughts. Once a human martial artist absorbed the blood of a god beast, it could no longer be purified and separated anymore. When a human absorbed the blood of a dragon god beast, it would directly fuse into that person's bloodline. As for that person's flesh and blood, it would be transformed, completely assimilating the dragon blood. However, the dragon blood that the Asura King absorbed was different. The Asura King was a higher form of a mystic realm demon. The core of its existence was a being of pure energy. Thus, the quality of the dragon blood wouldn't be affected, nor would it assimilate the dragon blood. In fact, the Asura King actually didn't absorb the dragon blood. And, after it died, its energy form could also be absorbed by a martial artist. If it had absorbed the dragon blood, then that dragon blood would have melted and become one with the martial artist's blood vitality. Dragon blood was a one-time use treasure for a martial artist. This was also reasonable. Otherwise, the bloodline strength within the 4 god beast clans could be recycled without end. Although this was so, there were still some martial artists with a very deep cultivation, or some genius disciples with a perfect god beast bloodline, that had an extremely pure blood essence. Their blood essence would contain the source strength of a god beast and had a similar effect to a god beast's blood. For instance, when Lin Ming obtained the Phoenix Blood Spear from Saint Artifact Pavilion, he had obtained the source strength left behind by the old Palace Master. Although this source strength couldn't compare to the richness of the old Palace Master's bloodline when he was alive, it was still extremely precious to a lower level disciple. Dragon 1 had the perfect Dragon Clan bloodline. Thus, Mo Eversnow also conveniently took away his blood essence. This blood essence finally fully condensed into a shimmering red blood bead that fell into Lin Ming's palm. Lin Ming already had the supreme dragon bone, and there was still a portion of the bone marrow blood remaining. In addition, there was also the blood marrow left behind by the Asura King. There was a bit over half of the original total left over. That was countless times more valuable than this blood bead. Even so, Lin Ming still planned to absorb this blood bead. This was because the only dragon bloodline that Lin Ming had obtained came from the drop of reverse scale blood that he had wasted 99% of. What he needed now was some lower level dragon blood to build a foundation for him. That would allow him to absorb the dragon marrow blood with the greatest efficiency. Moreover, what Lin Ming had obtained was the bone of an azure dragon. The bone of an azure dragon itself contained the concept of endlessness as well as an extremely powerful resilience and regenerative ability. As for Dragon 1's bloodline, that was the bloodline of a dragon turtle and a 5-clawed golden dragon. A dragon turtle excelled in its amazing defensive abilities, and the 5-clawed golden dragon was for fast and fierce attacks. Both of them had different laws that followed them. It would always be best to fill in the blanks whenever possible. Then, Lin Ming immersed his sense into Dragon 1's spatial ring. Novel being at. As Lin Ming searched through the spatial ring, he sighed in praise. This Dragon 1 clearly came from a distinguished noble family of the ancient dragon clan. He was near certain that it was a family like the Hero family or Xiao family. This was a super family of their clan, and the ancient dragon clan was itself 10 times greater than the ancient Phoenix clan to begin with. A super family of the ancient dragon clan should have a much deeper background than the Hero and Xiao families. As he opened Dragon 1's belongings, first were the violet sunstones. There were around 90 million violet sunstones. Violet sunstones were a common energy stone used in the divine realm. They were required to activate and maintain arrays, drive spirit boats, stimulate powerful magic weapons, and had all sorts of other uses. Because of this, violet sunstones were one of the most common currencies of the divine realm. Although Lin Ming's net worth wasn't low, he didn't actually have many violet sunstones. Besides violet sunstones, there was also a massive number of saint artifacts and pills. The worst of the saint artifacts were still high-grade saint artifacts. There were even 2 top-grade saint artifacts. When combined with the ones that Dragon 1 had been wearing, there was a total of 5. These top-grade saint artifacts were a pair of gloves, a vestment, a pill furnace, a necklace, and a pair of shoes. Dragon 1's combat method was extremely rare, he actually fought with his fists. An ancient dragon clan disciple would normally use a spear. As they said, saber like tiger, spear like dragon, only a spear could display the greatest might of the ancient dragon clan's cultivation methods. However, Dragon 1's weapon choice should have been related to his dragon turtle bloodline. A dragon turtle had an incomparably hard body and their strength was without limit. So, using fists in this situation wasn't a bad idea. A disciple of a distinguished family is indeed wealthy. Everything that Dragon 1 wore is a top-grade saint artifact, and they are even top-grade saint artifacts that approach the existence of transcendent saint artifacts. Of these saint artifacts, the one Lin Ming valued the most was the top-grade saint artifact vestment, as well as the top-grade saint artifact pill furnace. Dragon scale robes. 8 split heaven furnace. Good heavens, these 2 items actually have the source strength of an old elder from the ancient dragon clan. Their quality is no lower than the Phoenix blood spears. Lin Ming's robe and pill furnace were only ordinary high-grade saint artifacts he won from Huo Langwen, so how could they compare with Dragon 1's? With this robe and pill furnace, Lin Ming's defensive power and alchemical ability would increase by a great deal. Mentioning alchemy technique, because Lin Ming had been busy cultivating, he actually hadn't had time to train his alchemy skills, thus they had fallen behind. Luckily, now that Mo Eversnow had awakened, she should be able to help him with his alchemy. There was also that top-grade Saint artifact necklace. Although the quality was a bit lower, it was still a top-grade Saint artifact after all. And, an accessory-type Saint artifact was much rarer than armor and weapon types. Millimeter, it's mainly used to defend against soul and will attacks. Lin Ming concluded after investigating the necklace a bit. Generally speaking, accessory-type treasures had a much less extravagant effect than weapons, armors, and pill furnaces. But, their value was actually much higher, because the difficulty in making them was also that much higher. Besides Saint artifacts, there were also many pills that Lin Ming glanced over. Most of them were for healing wounds, recovery, or curing poisons. Millimeter. This is. Lin Ming pulled out a long-sized pill from an exquisite wood spirit jade box. This pill was deep green like jade and had an incomparably rich medicinal fragrance to it. Lin Ming didn't know that this was the 9 revolving dragon pill of the ancient dragon clan. Dragon 1 had brought 4 with him, but now there was only 1. Mo Eversnow's thoughts stirred and she added in, Lin Ming, this is an extremely wonderful healing pill. It will have the best effect when used on martial artists below the divine transformation realm. It can probably heal even someone on the verge of death back to 80 to 90% of their peak combat strength in a quarter hour. Oh. Lin Ming was startled. If even Mo Eversnow said this was an extremely good medicine, then its effects could be imagined. After putting away all of the pills and Saint artifacts, Lin Ming suddenly discovered that there were also several corpses in Dragon 1's spatial ring. Looking at their clothes, they were clearly disciples of the ancient dragon clan, and they had also died under the hands of the Asura king. Lin Ming didn't believe that Dragon 1 was so kind-hearted to gather up the bodies of his fellow disciples that had died to bury them later. The greatest possibility was that Dragon 1 had gathered their corpses in order to extract and burn their blood essence at some critical moment. This Dragon 1 is far too ruthless and cruel. Killing him is doing a favor for all the martial artists of the divine realm. Since Dragon 1 brought so many corpses with him, Lin Ming wouldn't be polite either. He took all of their spatial rings. Like this, he gained many more Saint artifacts, pills, as well as several bottles of dragon blood. Lin Ming discovered that these ancient dragon clan disciples all brought a great deal of dragon blood with them. There was ordinary dragon blood and even high-quality dragon blood. Normally speaking, the disciples of the ancient dragon clan wouldn't save up dragon blood, they would absorb it if given the chance. But, these disciples that entered the god-beast mystic realm were faced with immense dangers from all sides. If they encountered something strange and were somehow deeply injured, then they would be able to use this dragon blood to quickly recover. Or, they might come across some great lucky chance and would need to immediately make a breakthrough. If they absorbed this dragon blood, it would make their breakthrough smoother and more thorough. Thus, they were able to prepare for a number of exotic situations by gathering a massive amount of dragon blood. However, all of their efforts were taken in by Lin Ming. I have the supreme dragon bone as well as Dragon 1 source blood essence. This other dragon blood can be left behind for Yang Little Moon. Dragons and phoenixes together have always been a good sign. The dragon bloodline will be an enormous advantage for her. Moreover, this dragon blood won't leave behind any signs from Dragon 1 or the others. It won't be a problem for her to absorb it. This time, Lin Ming had indeed obtained a heaven-shaking advantage, but Yang Little Moon had only managed to obtain a few pieces of black coral. It was indeed a sad harvest. Then again, when Mo Eversnow had saved him, she had relied on using Yang Little Moon's body to do so. From this alone, Yang Little Moon had helped him a great deal. The dragon blood from the spatial rings of these people could be considered as her compensation. Alright. Let's leave now. Lin Ming organized everything. With the technique that Mo Eversnow taught him, he put everything that he could into the magic cube space to avoid unnecessary trouble. At this time, Mo Eversnow guided Lin Ming into the space of the magic cube. This was already the 7th time that Lin Ming had entered the magic cube space. He never imagined he would be re-entering under such circumstances. In the past, when Lin Ming entered the magic cube space, besides the glittering memory fragments that shined like countless stars, everything else was covered in a thick grey fog, blocking his sight. But as he entered this time, that fog had actually dispersed. Now, he could see that behind that fog was actually a vast and boundless expanse of starry sky. The space within the magic cube was as broad and vast as the universe itself. Lin Ming sighed with emotion. Then, as he looked ahead, he could see that the 1,000-foot supreme dragon bone was quietly floating in space, emitting a vast sublime aura. Most of the remaining blood marrow in the dragon bone had been absorbed by Mo Eversnow. She had used that to regain consciousness. However, the dragon bone itself hadn't been reduced at all. To Lin Ming, the dragon bone was even more precious than the blood marrow. It could be used to directly enhance his body and lay a solid foundation so that he could break into the 9 stars of the Dao Palace in the future. At this time, Mo Eversnow turned into a wisp of white light that departed Yang Little Moon's body and shot into the magic cube space. The sole form of Mo Eversnow that stood in front of Lin Ming was her true form. She was dressed in pure white, and her clothes flowed down the contours of her body like streams of water. Her curved eyebrows, her snow-white skin, her slender and curvy figure, her proud and tall form, she actually wasn't much shorter than Lin Ming was. Her body fused into the very space around her, and her enchanting eyes seemed to contain the light of galaxies within them. From her head to her toes, every inch of her being exuded an inviolable and sacred flavor, a goddess descended from the highest heavens, an enthralling messiah. Just by standing still, the space around her seemed to be purified. This was Mo Eversnow's original appearance. She had an immaculate and sacrosanct air about her that young Little Moon could never hope to attain, as if she were the manifestation of Ethraunus itself. Lin Ming stared at her in a stunned daze, nearly unable to stop his jaw from dropping. The Mo Eversnow that existed in reality was far more dazzling and appealing than anything he remembering seeing in his dreams. He stood there, speechless for some time. Tip, you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1067 Leaving the Mystic Realm. Chapter 1067 Leaving the Mystic Realm. Young Little Moon's memories of this have all been erased by me. We may leave now. If I don't have a body to possess, then my combat strength will be much lower than it is now. You will have to rely on yourself in the future. At novel being at. Mo Eversnow softly said. In terms of the soul, she was absolutely a peak master. Otherwise, doing something as reckless as erasing someone's memories or possessing their body might cause damage to their soul. But in Mo Eversnow's hands, there was no danger of any of that happening. Millimeter, I understand. Lin Ming also didn't plan to rely on Mo Eversnow to help him fight. What he could truly rely on in the end was his own strength. That's right. Concerning your Grand Mist Space and the Prime Emperor Lotus Flower, in the future I will teach you an auxiliary cultivation method. Not only will it increase your strength, but when you use martial skills, this cultivation method will activate and it will conceal special energy fluctuations. Even if someone has seen the Grand Mist Space with their own eyes, it will be impossible for them to recognize it. Moreover, those that have seen the Grand Mist Space are far too few. Those that have are either Empire Eons or World Kings. And even amongst World Kings, only a truly small minority of them have been able to witness the Grand Mist Space with their own eyes. In the past, Empire Eon Primordius was an extremely secretive character. As Mo Eversnow spoke, Lin Ming was overjoyed. Lin Ming truly did have a great headache over the Grand Mist Space. A great portion of his combat strength relied on the Grand Mist Space, but on the other hand he was also afraid that some wondrous character would be able to discern clues from it. If that happened then he would truly be in danger. After all, there were too many variables when it came to something like a transcendent divine might. Thus, when Lin Ming fought others, he wasn't able to utilize Grand Mist Space in its purest form. If he had some special method to hide the Grand Mist Space's energy fluctuations then he would be much better off. He wouldn't need to be so cautious and timid about his combat methods in the future. Like this, Lin Ming brought young Little Moon and left the sea of magma underneath the Mystic Realm. He deliberately chose another route to leave through. When Lin Ming finally emerged from the ground, he felt the pressure on him reduce by a great deal. He let out a deep breath, his tight nerves finally relaxing. It's over. This could be called a full harvest. Lin Ming said with zest. And at this time, he could feel that next to him, young Little Moon's eyelids moved. She was finally regaining consciousness. No. Young Little Moon rubbed her own forehead, her mind a bit pained and fuzzy. Millimeter. Lin Ming, young Little Moon was stunned as she first opened her eyes and saw Lin Ming. Then, she twisted her eyebrows together as if she were trying strenuously to recall something. She remembered that after the 100,000 Mystic Realm demons attacked, Lin Ming had received her into his extreme violet ring. But, she didn't know what happened after that which had left her unconscious. You've woken up. I ran into a 20,000-year cultivation Mystic Realm demon during the chaos and my ring was destroyed in the process. During the destructive space vortex, you were knocked unconscious by the Mystic Realm demon. Lin Ming had already thought of the words to say. And, vague hints and conjured scenes were placed into young Little Moon's mind by Mo Eversnow. As long as Lin Ming mentioned this, young Little Moon would indeed have such an impression. As for the extreme violet ring, that had already been taken into the magic cube space by Lin Ming. Now he wore an ordinary spatial ring. I have to apologize. I've burdened you again. Young Little Moon discovered that Lin Ming was in a bit of a pitiful state at the moment. Large holes had been burnt all over his clothes and he seemed exhausted. He had clearly fought through a violent battle just now. As young Little Moon realized that she would have been torn to shreds and eaten without even any bones left by that army of 100,000 Mystic Realm demons, she felt extremely grateful, but at the same time she also felt very guilty. She had done nothing to help, and had instead only added to his troubles. When the extreme violet ring had broken, if it hadn't been for Lin Ming saving her from the space storm then he probably wouldn't look so miserable. Thank you, young Little Moon whispered. Lin Ming shook his head and said, it's no problem. He continued, all right. We don't have much time until the God Beast Mystic Realm closes. Let's go and look a bit for some more lucky chances and prepare to leave. Millimeter, that sounds good. Young Little Moon quietly said. After obtaining the Supreme Dragon Bone, Lin Ming experienced several more situations. However, his harvests were much smaller. They were around the same as the black coral he had obtained before. Like this, they continued all the way until the time within the mystic realm had run out. Each person was only allowed to stay within the God-Beast mystic realm for 96 hours. Afterwards, they would all be transmitted away, regardless of where they were. Ancient Dragon Clan Celestial Dragon World. On the small planet that the God-Beast mystic realm transmission array was located at, many martial artists had gathered. Among these people were elders of the 4 great clans and even highest elders. These people had all come to greet and receive their returning disciples. Normally, after the disciples of the 4 clans entered the God-Beast mystic realm, they would return with some harvests. The best treasures amongst these would even tempt a holy lord. In this case, it was certainly safer to have an elder come and escort them away. And on the ancient Phoenix clan's side, the elder who came was surprisingly Hero Violentstone. Haha, isn't that elder hero? Isn't this just a smelting trial for junior disciples? To think that even you would be bothered to personally come. On the ancient Dragon clan's side, a middle-aged man laughed as he spoke. Generally, this sort of trial wouldn't be enough to alarm someone on the level of the highest elder. Hero Violentstone looked up at the man speaking and said, "There is a junior disciple that went in this time that I appreciate and am quite concerned about, so I thought that I would come and take a look since I'm free." Gold Even Moon, didn't you personally come here too? Is that disciple you're speaking of Lin Mei? I've already heard that in the illusionary god combat array, he managed to complete the 1000 slaughter, and even defeated Crimson Strife Cloud in a vivid battle. Not bad. But what a pity, his cultivation is too low and there are many dangers in the God-Beast mystic realm. I want to see just what sort of lucky chances Lin Ming managed to obtain this time, ha ha ha. Hearing Gold Even Moon imply that Lin Ming would have encountered some catastrophic danger in the God-Beast mystic realm, Hero Violentstone was a bit annoyed. He had never gotten along well with this Gold Even Moon. This was also unavoidable. They came from different factions and certainly had to compete with each other. Moreover, Hero Violentstone had always been wild and hot-tempered in how he acted, so there were far too few people that were able to get along peacefully with him. Humph, an extreme talent has a destiny that soars like a rainbow. Even if they encounter a calamitous situation filled with dangers, they can still manage to escape. It isn't easy for them to perish anywhere. Haha, you may say that, but each one of those disciples that enter the God-Beast mystic realm is an extreme genius of their era. Even so, there are still losses every time. This is an indisputable truth. Even though this is the first time for my Gold family's top junior disciple Gold Skyedge to enter the God-Beast mystic realm, he is still at the middle divine sea realm. As Gold Even Moon mentioned Gold Skyedge, he stroked his beard, a smug expression blooming on his face. Gold Skyedge, Hero Violentstone echoed. Normally, geniuses of the ancient Dragon clan would be ranked on the Divine Fate list and then be called Dragon 1, Dragon 2, or Dragon whatever, based on their corresponding rank. For him to suddenly hear this name, he really had no idea who it was. The 4 God-Beast clans had a new batch of junior disciples every 20 years or so anyway, and it was impossible for someone like Hero Violentstone to pay attention to all of them. It looks like you came this time for that little fellow called Gold Skyedge. I wonder what rank he is on the Divine Fate decree. Haha. As Gold Even Moon heard Hero Violentstone ask about Gold Skyedge of his own volition, he was extremely satisfied and proud. This was exactly what he hoped for. He said, the first time that Skyedge participated in the ancient dragon smelting trial, he managed to take first place on the Divine Fate decree. Luckily, he's managed to maintain that spot. First place on the Divine Fate decree. Hero Violentstone's eyebrows arched up. That must be the so-called Dragon 1 then. This person must have quite the skill to be ranked that high. After all, there were just far too many competing disciples in the ancient Dragon clan. Tip, you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1068 Marriage. Chapter 1068 Marriage. As Hero Violentstone and Gold Even Moon were speaking, the God-Beast Mystic Realm's ancient transmission array began to violently oscillate. Ripples appeared on the surface, spreading out. It was finally time for the smelting trial disciples to return through the transmission array. It's time. I wonder just what the disciples who went in have managed to obtain. Gold Even Moon smiled, and the other martial artists present also appeared expectant. Normally, no more than 10% of the smelting trial disciples that entered the God-Beast mystic realm would perish. Compared to the harvests that could be obtained, this was a necessary sacrifice. After all, the 4 God-Beast clans had a new batch of junior disciples every 20 or so years. Although it was a massive loss for some to die, that wasn't enough to affect the destiny of their clans. Moreover, geniuses required life or death adventures in order to grow. As the ripples became increasingly intense, the first wave of disciples appeared. These people all seemed glum and spiritless. Some disciples even had visible wounds. They had clearly had a hard time. Millimeter. Huo Violentstone's eyebrows shot up. An ominous premonition appeared in his heart. Gold Even Moon also stood up. Huo Violentstone asked, was there a change in the mystic realm? The ancient dragon clan disciples looked over at Huo Violentstone with dazed eyes upon hearing this question. They looked at each other, clearly not knowing what to say. Was there a problem? Did several people die? All the elders stood up, each of them deeply frowning. It was clear that some great event had occurred, otherwise it was impossible for so many people to be involved. Around 20 disciples died, we are not sure of the exact number. The ancient dragon clan's Dragonate said in a stammering voice. Dragonate was a Divine Sea disciple and could also be considered a vice-captain of the ancient dragon clan squad that went in his time. Although Dragon 1 would receive the main punishment as the captain, Dragon 1 hadn't reappeared ever since he dove into the Black Swamp. They had sent an Iron Dragon command but there still wasn't a reply. It was possible that Dragon 1's fate was more perilous than they thought. Thus, the responsibility of this debacle would be assumed by the several vice-captains. 20. Gold Even Moon was immensely shocked. This was absolutely a great matter. Even Huo Violentstone became nervous. His eyes wandered over the crowd, looking for Lin Ming and Huo Clearheart. Especially Lin Ming, his cultivation was limited, so if something so massive happened, would he still be able to live? What happened in there? Gold Even Moon hurriedly asked. It was an Asura King. We came across an Asura King as it was going through its demonic tribulation. But the Asura King was just far too strong. All of the disciples gathered together to attack it, but we failed to kill it in the end. Instead, we suffered critical losses and it's likely that 60% of the disciples have died. Dragon 12 said with a dose of shame. He was also a vice-captain of the squad, and this sort of defeat upon defeat was truly a loss of face. It proved just how incompetent the decision-maker had been. What, 60% of the disciples? Gold SKYEDGE. Just what the hell kind of sickness came over him? The clan gave him so many resources and treasures and had him take the lead, but he actually issued such a preposterous order. Gold Even Moon said in an apoplectic rage. The gold SKYEDGE he referred to was naturally Dragon 1. He didn't think that anything would happen to Dragon 1. Dragon 1 was the strongest out of all the disciples of the 4 clans who had gone in, so if anyone died it shouldn't have been him. Dragon 1, as Dragon 1 was mentioned, Dragon 8 and Dragon 12 both had ugly complexions. They eyed each other, motioning for the other to speak. Finally, no one said anything at all. Gold Even Moon felt his heart thump in his chest. Dragon 1 was the greatest talent that his gold family had produced in the last 1,000 years, and also the most outstanding disciple of the ancient dragon clan for the last 200 years. Although Gold Even Moon had been yelling at Dragon 1 just now, if there really had been something that happened to him, then the losses would be unimaginable. Dragon 8 and Dragon 12 didn't reply. Then, a light flashed and more disciples were transmitted out. Huo Violentstone swept an eye over the newcomers and simultaneously saw Lin Ming and Huo Clearheart arrive. In addition, even the weakest Yang Little Moon was still perfectly safe. He finally let out a long breath of relief. Everything was okay. Coming back alive is great, it's great. Huo Violentstone said, his palms a bit sweaty. At this time, he didn't care what harvests they had. It could be said that their coming back alive was the greatest harvest of all. Gold Even Moon also swept through the crowd. When he didn't find Dragon 1, his complexion became thoroughly gloomy. After several more breaths of time, a few more disciples were sent out. And at this time, the fluctuating ripples of the transmission array began to die down. This was proof that no more disciples would be passing through the transmission array. In other words, Dragon 1 had perished. The most outstanding young genius that the ancient dragon clan had produced in the last 200 years, who had high hopes of becoming a Holy Lord level character, whose cultivation reached the middle Divine Sea realm, whose strength far surpassed all others, and who also had multiple life-saving methods, had actually died in the God-Beast mystic realm. This sort of matter had likely not occurred in the last 10,000 years. Who killed Dragon 1? Was it the Asura King? Gold Even Moon wildly growled, his eyes bloodshot. As he looked around he was like a wild beast. In his opinion, although Dragon 1 wasn't the Asura King's match, he should still have had the ability to escape, especially amongst so many other people. Could he have been tripped or stopped by someone, preventing him from escaping? Lin Ming was watching from the side. He remained with an indifferent look on his face upon meeting Gold Even Moon's bloodthirsty eyes. It was indeed far too difficult to find evidence of who killed who in the God-Beast mystic realm, so he didn't fear anything at all. As for some special tracing mark being left on the killer, Lin Ming also asked Mo Eversnow to look over him and she assured him everything was okay. In this situation, as long as Lin Ming insisted it had nothing to do with him then everything would be okay. Huo Violentstone also realized an accident had occurred to Dragon 1. Normally, with his personality, he would have been gloating to Gold Even Moon and even mocking him for several rounds, but with the ancient Phoenix clan also having lost several disciples, he wasn't in the mood to do so. He only lightly shook his head and turned to his disciples, saying, "What did you brats obtain?" The remaining disciples all took out the treasures that they obtained in the mystic realm for Huo Violentstone to see. Yang Little Moon and Lin Ming took out their black coral. The value of this treasure wasn't enough to make up for the cost of the Violet Sunstones for entering the God Beast Mystic Realm. Millimeter, your harvest is all right. Huo Violent Stone nodded. He was satisfied enough that Lin Ming had emerged alive. Xiaoping, the one with the highest cultivation of the ancient Phoenix clan disciples, had actually found something quite valuable. It was a bit of Phoenix Glide grass. Phoenix Glide grass was a type of spirit grass that grew alongside a phoenix. It was extremely valuable and was even useful for a holy lord. By all reasoning, there hadn't been a god beast in the god beast mystic realm for countless hundreds of millions of years, so any Phoenix Glide grass should have already withered away. But the Phoenix Glide grass that Xiaoping found was actually sealed within a piece of wood spirit jade and preserved well, just like an insect in amber. Xiaoping's harvest was naturally praised by the protectors behind Huo Violent Stone. With their status, they had to flatter Xiaoping. After all, Xiaoping was destined to become a high-level figure of the ancient Phoenix clan. But Lin Ming looked on indifferently. This Xiaoping was not any sort of good or righteous fellow. When the disciples of the ancient Phoenix clan had been besieged by mystic realm demons and even some with 10,000 plus year cultivations, he had waited for the time when one of his teammates had died and then escaped by himself. Let's go. We're returning to the ancient Phoenix clan. Huo Violent Stone lightly sighed. Although the losses were serious this time, this was also the fate of those that chose to walk down the road of martial arts. There was nothing else to say. At novel being at. At this time, Lin Ming said with a true essence sound transmission, Honorable Master, this disciple does not wish to return to the Phoenix clan for the time being. I wish to go out and adventure a bit. The Supreme Dragon Bone could not be revealed, and absorbing it was also a very long and strenuous process. Lin Ming didn't plan on absorbing it within the clan. He wasn't even able to tell Huo Violent Stone about it. After all, the Supreme Dragon Bone was a type of treasure that even a world king would go mad with envy for. If Huo Violent Stone found out, then even maintaining their current relationship would be more than he expected. It could be said that in some situations, not even the ties between a father and son could be trusted, much less the fact that he was not a direct descendant of the Huo family to begin with. Millimeter. You want to go out and adventure? Huo Violent Stone frowned. There were indeed many disciples of the ancient Phoenix clan that went out adventuring to gain experience, but now wasn't a good time for Lin Ming to do so. Lin Ming, you aren't even at the Divine Sea. Do you know how many masters exist in the Divine Realm? If you are not careful and stumble into some ordinary divine transformation realm martial artist, even they will be enough to kill you. Moreover, it is almost time for you to attack the 8th stage of life destruction. If you return to my Huo family, we can provide you with many resources to assist you, and there is even the Sacred Flame Testament which you can meditate over. There is even, well, I was planning on arranging a wedding for you. You two can be considered a young golden couple, perfectly suited for each other. A marriage like this is definitely a good thing. As Huo Violent Stone spoke to her, he inadvertently glanced at Yang Little Moon, who was standing beside Lin Ming. His eyes flashed with a barely traceable happiness. Although this happiness seemed simple, there was actually a mischievous and devilish meaning to it, as if he were up to no good. Yang Little Moon froze. From the start, she didn't know what those words meant, but as realization began to slowly dawn on her, her large eyes widened. She looked over to Huo Violent Stone in disbelief. Could it be? The so-called young golden couple, perfectly suited for each other, that seemed, to be her and Lin Ming. Within the entire ancient Phoenix clan, there were actually several women that had the perfect ancient Phoenix bloodline. But, besides herself, everyone else was a senior disciple or already married. They clearly didn't suit Lin Ming. In addition, there was also that look that Huo Violent Stone shot at her just now. She already had a firm grasp that she was the subject of this marriage talk. As Yang Little Moon realized this point, she didn't know what to feel. For a woman with a perfect ancient Phoenix bloodline, if a man was to take her primordial yin, that would have a tremendous effect on her own bloodline strength. After all, essence energy was the same as bloodline, and double cultivation also meant to fuse a portion of her bloodline with the man's, so how could she not be affected? Yang Little Moon had made a vow to never marry until she became a holy lord, because she didn't want the power of her bloodline to be diluted. But now, if she married Lin Ming, then she... As Yang Little Moon imagined such a scene, she found this a bit difficult to accept, and yet not at the same time. She couldn't help but sneak a glance at Lin Ming. Lin Ming didn't seem to have any intention or interest in a marriage with anyone, thus he never even thought of it. He only looked at Huo Violent Stone and said with all seriousness, "This disciple truly wishes to go out and adventure. I ask that Honorable Master approves." Tip, you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1069 Secret of the Magic Cube. Chapter 1069 Secret of the Magic Cube. You brat, why are you insisting on leaving? Huo Violent Stone huffed. But as he saw Lin Ming's earnest expression, he relented. He knew that when Lin Ming did things, he naturally had his own reasons for doing so. He wouldn't do something that he didn't have a full grasp of. Whether it was Huo Yangguang or seizing the drop of ancient Phoenix blood essence, he had done so with full confidence. Lin Ming hesitated. In truth, having to think of a reason wasn't too difficult. In fact, he could even come up with some ridiculous reasoning like he was being drawn in by the dark grip of destiny or something like that. After all, destiny was an illusory enough concept that he could attribute his reasons to that, and there wasn't anyone that could doubt it. However, just as Lin Ming was about to speak, Huo Violent Stone waved his hand and said, "Well, whatever. It's fine as long as you know what you're doing. I trust in your judgment. Thank you, Honorable Master, for your approval." Lin Ming was glad. If possible, he didn't want to come up with some random lie to deceive Huo Violent Stone. Beside Lin Ming, Yang Little Moon also relaxed. If Lin Ming didn't leave, then Huo Violent Stone would truly bring up the idea of marriage to her Yang family, and then she would be stuck in a conundrum of having to make two difficult choices. On one hand, she couldn't help but admit that she held some goodwill towards Lin Ming. On the other hand, she had once made a vow to herself. Everyone boarded the spirit ship and began to fly back to the ancient Phoenix clan. As for Lin Ming, he departed midway through the trip by himself. Just before leaving, Huo Violent Stone gave him 5 million violet sunstones as well as his own spirit ship so that he could travel through space. Lin Ming left the majority of the dragon blood to Yang Little Moon. Most of this dragon blood was placed in a spatial ring. He only told her that this was a lucky chance he had obtained while she was unconscious and decided to divide a part of it to her, and also asked her not to leak out this secret. When Lin Ming left, Yang Little Moon finally searched the spatial ring. It was only then that she found over 1,000 drops of dragon blood in the spatial ring, and this dragon blood was also of relatively high quality. This left her dumbfounded. She didn't think that Lin Ming would gift her something of such high value. Where did Lin Ming obtain so much dragon blood? Did he find a dragon blood pool in the god-beast mystic realm? Yang Little Moon mumbled to herself. In her opinion, if Lin Ming divided her this much dragon blood, then he must inevitably have kept far more with him. Could Lin Ming's lucky chance have been the same as the phoenix blood pond I found in the past? As Yang Little Moon put away the dragon blood, she looked out of the window of her room, gazing at the infinite void and countless stars of space. She felt an inexplicable sense of loss as she fell into a deep and pensive trance. Yang Little Moon never thought that Lin Ming would leave for years this time, and by the time he returned, she would already be at the Divine Sea realm. In the vastness of the endless space, a light grey spirit ship rapidly flew through. This spirit ship wasn't too big, and its grey surface seemed to fuse into the starry skies. In addition, there was a concealing array formation carved onto the surface of the spirit ship. If a master didn't carefully probe with their senses, it was impossible to discover. The master of this spirit ship was naturally Lin Ming. At this time, Lin Ming was sitting in the center of the spirit ship, studying the array formations that drove it. Even for such a small spirit ship, passing through space with the Great Void Shift just once costs 100,000 violet sunstones. It takes too many violet sunstones to pass through space, and, if one were to travel across the great worlds of the divine realm, one would also have to use transmission arrays, and that consumes even more violet sunstones. Poor martial artists can never afford interstellar travel, at novel being at. That's right. In the divine realm, very few people use violet sunstones for training. They are mainly used to drive a variety of array formations. Especially for a Holy Land level palace, they must consume a massive number of violet sunstones to be maintained. Violet sunstones are the most common power source in the divine realm. With a faint whimsical voice, Mo Eversnow appeared beside Lin Ming. She had been hiding in the magic cube during this, so it was impossible for anyone to detect her presence. Lin Ming asked, "Miss Mo, I've had some questions that have been trapped in my heart for a long time. I wonder if it's all right to ask you about them." "Ask away," Mo Eversnow said. Lin Ming paused for a brief moment, then asked, "Miss Mo, I want to know, just what is the magic cube? What rank treasure is it? Besides storing soul fragments, just what functions does it have? Why would it cause so many people to struggle for it in the past?" Mo Eversnow gently shook her head. She said, "I have no idea just what the magic cube is. Perhaps it is the leftover crystallized soul of an existence beyond our understanding. It has the ability to crush apart the souls of all existence. However, with my strength, it is very difficult to meditate and perceive it, much less thoroughly control it. Crush apart souls. Is it a soul attack type of treasure?" Lin Ming recalled that in his first dream of Mo Eversnow, he had seen her use her half-step World King strength to instantly annihilate 10,000 Divine Realm powerhouses. Many of them were at the late Divine Lord Realm and even Holy Lord Realm. She had even been able to severely wound the early World King, Tio Mingzi. One could see from this alone just how powerful the magic cube's soul attack function was. Mo Eversnow said, "To attack the soul is only a single function of the magic cube. It has another effect that truly defies the will of the heavens. That is, after it crushes and absorbs a soul, it can raise that soul's spirit mark and turn it into ownerless memory fragments. If one swallows these memory fragments, they can completely obtain the memories of others. This includes cultivation methods, martial skills, auxiliary skills, array formation techniques, and everything else you can think of. In other words, if you can gain control of the magic cube, if you kill someone that has studied a transcendent divine might, you can kill them and swallow up their divine soul with the magic cube. Then, you can raise their spirit mark and absorb their memories. You will obtain that entire transcendent divine might without the least bit missing. Mo Eversnow slowly nodded. To date, this was the most powerful function of the magic cube she had discovered. It had to be known that in the martial world, the foundation of every sect was their inheritances. But, these inheritance jade slips could only be carved by those who had an extremely high level of understanding of these inheritances, and it also required a massive amount of time and effort to do so. This caused the inheritance jade slips of these cultivation methods to be even more precious, because those that were able to let a martial artist study extremely powerful top-level cultivation methods to large success were far too few in number. There were even many inheritance jade slips that were singular and unique, without another copy in existence. Even if a normal disciple were to look at this jade slip and record it all in their mind, they still wouldn't have the ability to duplicate it. If they were killed by someone, that killer could use a soul-searching technique, but all they would find would be incomplete fragments. It would simply be impossible to use this method to reproduce a full cultivation method. In other words, as long as a sect preserved and kept their inheritance jade slips, they would never leak out their inheritances. Similarly, array formation technique, alchemy technique, refining technique, all of this was the same. In order to completely obtain someone's cultivation methods or array formation techniques, auxiliary skill memory, practice experience, and so forth, there was only a single way to go about that, and that was to directly fuse souls with the other party. But all souls had a spirit mark. Once absorbed, the spirit marks would fuse together and one would begin to lose themselves everything that made that person that person. A spirit mark was thoroughly integrated into every piece of the soul. If one wanted to erase a spirit mark, that was actually very simple. One only needed to use a battle spirit to wipe out the spirit mark, but this action would also destroy the soul. When comparing the brain to the soul, the spirit mark would be the same as every nerve and blood vessel that ran through the brain. It was impossible for a doctor, no matter how skilled they were, to remove those nerves and blood vessels without ruining the brain. Thus, when one erased a spirit mark, the soul would also not be able to withstand it. The soul would eventually completely break down into nothingness. But the magic cube was different. It could perfectly remove all spirit marks. It allowed one to completely absorb all of an opponent's memories and experiences, no matter what top cultivation method or auxiliary skill it was. Mo Eversnow's words didn't surprise Lin Ming, he had already been able to take advantage of this function. But, the memory fragments Lin Ming absorbed in the past were all of average quality and he had only been able to do so passively. If he could one day perfectly control the magic cube, then whenever he slayed a genius, he would be able to swallow their memories and take out whatever he found useful. This was the same as countless extreme geniuses helping to train Lin Ming. Once this began to accumulate, it would become increasingly terrifying. Lin Ming would be able to hold more and more information in his mind until it was limitless. Lin Ming couldn't help but ask, Miss Mo, from what I know, this magic cube is likely some legendary magic tool. How could it have fallen into the hands of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands? It seems as if the Verdant Feather Holy Lands is only. Mo Eversnow faintly smiled and said, You're saying that the Verdant Feather Holy Lands was too weak to control the magic cube. In truth, the Verdant Feather Holy Lands was a World King level holy land, and the one with the highest cultivation was my grandfather, the Verdant Feather World King. And, my great nemesis Tian Mingzi was once the direct disciple of my grandfather. The magic cube was first accidentally obtained in a mystic realm by my grandfather, but at that time, he didn't know what it was, thus the reason that he was able to keep the magic cube for so long. At the time, my grandfather only felt as if the aura of the magic cube was extraordinary. He began to concentrate his time on slowly studying and unraveling it, but unfortunately, there was some mutation that happened later. Perhaps when my grandfather was meditating on the secrets of the magic cube he caused some massive backlash, but regardless of what happened, the end result was that my grandfather's soul was seriously wounded. During this time period, my grandfather's strength was severely lowered because of these soul injuries. If a World King level powerhouse soul is seriously injured, wanting to restore it is extremely difficult. One would need an unimaginable level of heavenly materials. For instance, something like the Supreme Dragon Bone. A Supreme Dragon Bone is something incomparably difficult to find, even for a World King level holy land, thus my grandfather had no choice but to slowly recuperate. But coincidentally, Tian Mingzi had also managed to break through into the World King realm at that time. His strength rose dramatically and his original talent was also astonishingly high. The only thing greater was his ambition. When he learned of the magic cube, he took advantage of the period when my grandfather was injured to ambush him and try to steal the magic cube. The result was that he underestimated how strong my grandfather was. My grandfather had been a world king for many years and his background was incomparably deep. He paid a great price to force out Tian Mingzi. But then, more wounds were added to my grandfather's original soul wound, and he finally perished because of that. As Mo Eversnow spoke to her, her eyes flashed with sadness. Lin Ming also became aware. No wonder Mo Eversnow hated Tian Mingzi with every fiber of her body. He had been nothing but a rabid wolf. He was once the chief disciple of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands, but he in turn wiped out the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. Such a person truly deserved to die. Mo Eversnow continued, afterwards, the magic cube fell into my hands. But, because of what happened, a great schism appeared in the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. Some people decided to betray me and follow Tian Mingzi, later founding their own netherworld holy land. You should already know what happened after that. Tip, you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters.
A vicious strike.
Martial World. Chapter 1070 Absorbing the Dragon Marrow. Chapter 1070 Absorbing the Dragon Marrow. Betray. Lin Ming's eyebrows jumped up. After Mo Eversnow's grandfather died, Tian Mingzi was actually able to tear apart the factions of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. This sort of plan had probably been percolating for a painstakingly long time, and he had likely even had the thought of revolting much earlier. It was difficult to ascertain all the different interests and conflicts within a super sect. Although Tian Mingzi was the direct disciple of Mo Eversnow's grandfather, as time passed and his wings grew, he began to reveal greater ambitions. And, when Mo Eversnow's grandfather felt this, he began to guard against it. Tian Mingzi then in turn discovered that Mo Eversnow's grandfather was guarding against him and thus their conflicts would never be resolved. With Tian Mingzi's strength and status, it was certainly easy for him to win over supporters. In the past, even though Mo Eversnow's talent was beyond belief, she was still too young. After the old World King died, it was far too hard for her to manage affairs. Thus, the World King level Verdant Feather Holy Lands had been destroyed because of all these circumstances gathering together. It was a truly sad and mournful time. However, through Mo Eversnow's description, Lin Ming also developed some vigilance towards Tian Mingzi. This sort of person was extremely talented, moreover he was someone that was ungrateful and had no virtues. He was cruel, merciless, and would resort to any means necessary to achieve his goal. He was a character who had even subverted a World King level Holy Land. Although he had managed to do so because he grasped the perfect timing, this still wasn't something that an ordinary person could accomplish. Enough. Let's not mention the past for now. The reason we left is to help you absorb the Supreme Dragon Bone. There is simply too much marrow in this dragon marrow, and it is also too pure. Normally, a general martial artist wouldn't be able to swallow all of it. Even someone like Dragon 1 would have to slowly absorb the dragon marrow over an extremely long period of time. Let alone Dragon 1, even the Asura King had used an exceedingly long time and only managed to absorb less than half of it. That was the same amount that Lin Ming was planning to absorb. Of course, that was the dragon marrow that was refined from the Asura King after it died. Mo Eversnow changed the topic and said, I actually want you to absorb all of it at once. First you will absorb the dragon marrow. As for the dragon bone, that is mostly related to your body transformation technique, so you can take your time with that. Because you are about to cross life destruction again, the more dragon marrow you have within your body, the greater the advantage will be, otherwise a great portion of its effects will be weakened. You dual cultivate body and energy, so your meridians, flesh, and bones, all of it far exceeds an ordinary person in terms of tenacity. If you can't absorb the dragon marrow in a single breath, then your dual body and energy cultivation can be considered wasted. Mo Eversnow sounded indifferent, but her words actually left Lin Ming speechless. Having grown so much, he had nearly surpassed all other geniuses he had encountered on his road, wherever and whenever. He had received countless praises from countless people, but now with Mo Eversnow here, her strict instructions left him flabbergasted. Lin Ming only thought that he could meet her requirements, wanting to go beyond them wouldn't be easy at all. This was also reasonable. Mo Eversnow was someone that could have easily become a world king, and she also chose to dual cultivate in body and energy. Her talent had reached an unimaginably high level. The standards that she set for herself were naturally the standards she set for Lin Ming. Look for a place to absorb the dragon bone marrow first. Then I will need you to find some more resources from the Verdant Feather Holy Lands in the past. And, although the Verdant Feather Holy Lands met great calamity in the past, they actually didn't completely fall apart. There were still some factions that were left behind. This is also due to the planning of my grandfather, even Tian Mingzi doesn't know of it. When my grandfather was on his deathbed, he revealed all of this to me. The majority of the wealth was taken away by my auntie so that she could integrate it into an influence somewhere. That influence should have slowly developed upwards by now. That influence should have completely cut off contact with the Verdant Feather Holy Lands, otherwise I fear that Tian Mingzi would have already eliminated them. As the saying went, even when a centipede was chopped up it could still move, much less a World King level Holy Land like the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. It wasn't surprising that such a Holy Land saved up a great portion of its resources during its most glorious time so that they could have escape routes for the future. Lin Ming hesitated for a moment. He asked, is your auntie trustworthy? She might. She is trustworthy. Mo Eversnow firmly nodded. My parents died early on. Besides my grandfather, my auntie was the closest person to me. Good. Then we'll go look for your auntie. I hope that everything goes smoothly. Half a month later, in the vast expanse of space, there was a common-looking planet. This planet was countless billions of miles away from the great primary worlds, and the planet was also 100,000 miles in diameter. In the great divine realm, there were countless planets like this. And at this time, deep within the planet, there was a hidden cave dwelling that had just been formed. This cave dwelling was layered with all sorts of clever concealing array formations. Even a Divine Lord Realm powerhouse would have difficulty seeing through it. This is good. Let's have you absorb the dragon marrow here. I've scanned over the surrounding area and there are no martial artists that should be able to threaten you. In addition to my concealing array formations, nobody should be able to find you here. You should be safe. In the Divine Realm, one needed to be at least a Divine Sea powerhouse to go out and adventure. Otherwise, one could die countless times. This was because there were far too many Divine Transformation Realm powerhouses in the Divine Realm. Even someone whose talent wasn't all that great could still cultivate to the Divine Transformation Realm. No matter how talented a life destruction genius was, if they ran into some garbage Divine Transformation martial artist, they would still be done for. This was also the reason why Huo Violentstone didn't want Lin Ming to go out adventuring. But with Mo Eversnow accompanying him, none of that was a problem. Okay. Lin Ming sat down on a stone bed and took out the Extreme Violet Ring, directly entering it. Within the Extreme Violet Ring, the 1,000-foot Supreme Dragon Bone rose high into the sky. And around the Supreme Dragon Bone floated a black-red pill. This pill was the size of a pigeon egg and it was smooth as if it were carved from black jade. And on the pill's surface, there was the image of an azure dragon. This azure dragon was the condensed dragon marrow essence of the dragon bone. Although it was faint, it actually contained inherent space laws that Mo Eversnow had placed within it. The dragon marrow essence was compressed in this space and the total quantity was extremely terrifying. Lin Ming took a deep breath but didn't move the dragon bone. He instead grabbed the pill. This was a pill formed from the marriage of the 100,000-year-old Asura King's source energy and the Supreme Dragon Bone's dragon marrow essence. Regardless of which one, both were precious treasures. In particular, the dragon marrow essence. That was something that would even cause the envious rampage of a World King level powerhouse. As Lin Ming held the pill in his hand, he felt as if the pill itself was breathing, like there was a little living dragonling within it. Lin Ming had already absorbed some dragon blood as well as the source strength left behind by Dragon 1. All of that had allowed Lin Ming to lay down a foundation and had helped his body adapt to absorb more in the future. Now, it was time to absorb the dragon marrow. Lin Ming directly swallowed the pill in his mouth. At that moment, he felt as if there was a tiny snake twisting around his tongue. What mysterious dragon marrow essence. The azure dragon that left behind this dragon bone has already been dead for countless hundreds of millions of years, and yet its blood marrow still has so much vitality. The ancient azure dragon had a special characteristic, and that was that its energy had the attribute of endlessness. Its resiliency and vitality were powerful to an incredible degree. Thus, even though the azure dragon had been dead for so long, the dragon marrow it left behind still managed to maintain its vitality. As the dragon marrow entered his body, Lin Ming felt a flow of tyrannical and brutal energy surge into him, flooding through his meridian channels, bloodline, acupoints, and impacting through his entire body. Lin Ming had already expected this situation. After all, he was suddenly absorbing a great deal of dragon marrow, and the dragon marrow had an extreme amount of vitality left within it. After entering his body, the dragon marrow would definitely not be resigned to allowing itself to be assimilated. Thus it tried to resist, hence the beginning of the pain in his body. Lin Ming felt his body becoming increasingly hot, as if he were placed into a giant pot of boiling water. Although this heat was far from being comparable to the 8th level in the 18 Hells of Flame, when Lin Ming was there he at least was able to keep the heat away from his body by using the power of the fire laws and also his protective true essence, thus the true temperature he faced wasn't high at all. At novel being at. But now, the situation was completely different. The heat was directly swelling up within Lin Ming's body. A martial artist's physical body didn't have too great an ability to resist high temperatures. Even though Lin Ming dual cultivated in body and energy, he wasn't that much different either. His entire body began to drip with sweat. Because of the blazing heat, even his thoughts became slow. Soon, his clothes began to burn until they were reduced to ash, leaving behind nothing but the top-grade Saint Artifact Dragon Scale robe draped over his naked skin. Lin Ming took great breaths of air, and every time he breathed out, fire would follow. All of the acupoints of his body expanded, and faint red steam flowed out from his body, nearly gushing out due to the amazing heat. Seal off your acupoints, otherwise you will lose the power of the dragon marrow. That red steam escaping is the purest bloodline strength. Mo Eversnow said, standing beside Lin Ming. In the past, she had absorbed a great number of soul fragments, thus her experience was extraordinarily vast. She was able to guide Lin Ming so that he could absorb the dragon marrow to the greatest effect. Seal off the acupoints. Lin Ming shouldered the agonizing pain and forcefully moved his senses to seal off his acupoints. As he did so, he felt as if his entire body were about to explode. A brutal energy tore through all of his meridians and blood vessels. Even though he dual cultivated in body and energy and his meridians were far tougher than normal, they still couldn't withstand such an overbearing energy. Puff puff puff. Meridians and blood vessels all over Lin Ming's body burst apart from the energy. His skin ruptured, causing crimson streams of blood to flow out. In this current situation, the pain of his skin cracking apart wasn't anything to Lin Ming at all. The true pain came from the dragon marrow that burned within his body. If Lin Ming's will hadn't been tempered for so long, if it wasn't incomparably tough, and if his battle spirit hadn't reached the gold level, his consciousness might have collapsed by now. Do not worry. The blood leaving your body is common blood. Even though you condensed a spirit body after crossing life destruction and your every cell was tempered by energy, your flesh and blood is still your original flesh and blood. You cannot yet be considered as having been reborn, only transformed. And afterwards, when you absorbed the drop of Phoenix blood essence, that may have been an incomparably precious treasure, but that was still a mere single drop. That is far too little. Now, for you to absorb this dragon marrow is for you to truly be reborn. Discard your old blood and your old marrow. Although Lin Ming looked like a fountain that was erupting with blood, Mo Everest No was still calm as she watched this scene. She slowly explained the effects of the dragon marrow. In truth, at this time, every single tiny change in Lin Ming's body was being covered by Mo Everest No's senses and was under her complete control. As long as the tiniest unwelcome change appeared in Lin Ming's body, she could instantly respond and guarantee that his life wouldn't be in danger. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1071 Crossing 8 Fall. Chapter 1071 Crossing 8 Fall. Time slowly passed. Lin Ming withstood the agonizing suffering for an entire hour. This pain simply couldn't be described with words. It was like every bit and piece of his flesh and blood was being grinded down by the dragon blood. This was even more painful than being roasted within the hells of flame. His body was directly burnt from the inside out. And at this time, the dragon marrow began to show its miraculous effects. As a part of the dragon marrow fused with Lin Ming's body, it began to display its powerful regenerative abilities. Some of Lin Ming's shattered meridians and torn organs began to slowly regenerate. As they did, he felt his entire body itch. But before these wounds could fully heal, they would tear right back open. This painful ripping along with the unbearable itching was a feeling that made one wish for death. All of Lin Ming's blood and sweat was mixed together in a crimson pool on the ground. Lin Ming had lost over 80% of his blood. An ordinary person would have died to the point of not being able to die anymore. Even if it were a martial artist, losing so much blood would begin to affect their life source. But, Lin Ming had dragon marrow in his body, and this dragon marrow was slowly fusing into Lin Ming's own marrow and beginning to replace it. Now, the blood that he produced was no longer ordinary blood, but blood that was close to being a dragon's blood. This was truly washing the marrow and bringing in new blood. He was replacing his own blood with dragon blood. In this sense, the dragon marrow contained within the supreme dragon bone had a fundamental difference from the dragon marrow blood that the ancient dragon clan had. Dragon marrow blood was only the blood from a dragon's marrow. Once it was transplanted into a human's body, it could only transform their bloodline. That sort of transformation could not compare with the complete dragon marrow. With the transplantation of dragon marrow, that was truly transformation of the marrow. One's own marrow would change too, and that was the equivalent of altering the very basis of one's blood. It would make one's blood more similar to dragon blood. Mo Everest No continued to stand guard beside Lin Ming. Every single change within Lin Ming's body fell into her eyes. Whenever some phoenix blood leaked out with the ordinary blood, she would cast a seal and lock that phoenix blood into his body. At novel being at. This was the so-called union of dragon and phoenix. The newly absorbed dragon marrow did not conflict with the phoenix blood in Lin Ming's body at all. Rather, they fused together perfectly and even mutually benefited each other. In the scope of Mo Everest No's senses, she could see that Lin Ming was being thoroughly transformed. The blood in Lin Ming's blood vessels began to shine with a bright light. If one took a drop of Lin Ming's blood into a completely dark room, they would be able to see his blood emit a light golden radiance, similar to a shining night pearl. At this step, Mo Everest No knew that Lin Ming's transformation was thoroughly completed. She also let out a light breath. For an entire hour, she had been combing her senses through every single inch of Lin Ming's flesh and blood, feeling every minute change happening. This wasn't an easy process at all. This is truly an extraordinary lucky chance. In the past, if my verdant feather holy lands had such dragon marrow, then my grandfather's injuries would have been healed. If he was able to live longer, then I would have been able to break into the World King realm. At that time, I would naturally have assumed the position of ruler of the verdant feather holy lands. I might have even become the next World King of the shifting feather world and saved the verdant feather holy lands from falling apart. Mo Everest No sighed. She had never had such a lucky chance in the past, but now Lin Ming did. If this continued, then Lin Ming would begin to accumulate more and more superiorities. His future accomplishments would reach a terrifying degree. At this time Lin Ming had fallen into a coma. Rather, it wasn't exactly a coma, but a dormant state where he had fallen completely unconscious. Every single cell in his body had also entered a dormant condition. In this state, Lin Ming's body, meridians, bones, organs, all of them were experiencing earth-shaking changes. This was a change on the cellular level. Dragon blood now flowed through Lin Ming's veins, and blood was what carried energy to nourish the cells throughout the body. To have a body nourished with dragon blood and common blood, of course the effects were different. Slowly, Lin Ming's cells became more dense and the connection between them more solid. Every single strand of Lin Ming's body could withstand a tearing force of 1,000,000 jins. As Lin Ming's body changed, even his nails fell off for new ones to appear. These new nails shined like crystal and seemed to be as soft and glossy as jade petals. They could even be called perfect. A few hours later, Lin Ming's broken meridians began to slowly mend together. After washing his marrow and switching his blood, there were countless injuries littered through Lin Ming's body. But, underneath the new regenerative properties of Lin Ming's body, all of these wounds healed up. It would only be another 1 or 2 hours for Lin Ming to completely recover. And at this moment, a sudden change occurred. All of the surrounding heaven and earth origin energy began surging towards Lin Ming. The energy within his body rapidly expanded, and the regenerated skin ruptured again. Deep and shocking fissures appeared through his body, causing his flesh to split apart and blood to rain down. Following this, Lin Ming's meridians and blood vessels began to shatter. Immense amounts of energy swelled up within him as if he would explode at any moment. Mo Eversnow wrinkled her eyebrows as she saw this sudden chance. He's actually crossing 8 fall at such a time, millimeter, so he had been suppressing his cultivation all this time. In truth, Lin Ming had long been able to cross 8 fall, but he had been tamping down his own strength because he wished to better perceive the laws. If he did so, then when he crossed 9 fall he would be able to have a greater baptism of the heavenly Tao and obtain a much more significant advantage from that. But now, with his body having entered a dormant state and no consciousness lingering in his spiritual sea, he was naturally unable to suppress the energy in his body. Thus, he began to spontaneously cross the 8th stage of life destruction. This was caused by the laws of the heavenly Tao. As Mo Eversnow saw the limited amount of energy within the extreme violet ring be completely sucked dry by Lin Ming, she quickly formed several seals and slammed them into his body, unlocking the energy within the pill he swallowed. When Mo Eversnow refined the Asura King, she had sealed all of the Asura King's source energy into the pill. As for the dragon marrow, that formed the azure dragon that wrapped around the bead. From the very beginning when Lin Ming swallowed the pill, he had only absorbed the dragon marrow. The Asura King's source energy was still sealed away. This was because Mo Eversnow had considered the amount of energy Lin Ming could withstand. Absorbing that much dragon marrow was already at the edge of his limits. If he had absorbed the Asura King's source energy during that, then his body would have exploded into ashes. But now that Lin Ming had completely fused the dragon marrow into his body and was starting to cross the 8th stage of life destruction, this was naturally the best time to unlock the energy within the pill. One lucky chance has just ended and now another lucky chance has come. This is the total source strength of the Asura King, but it is used for you to cross the 8th stage of life destruction. Although there were countless mystic realms scattered all throughout the divine realm, there were great energy barriers that blocked entry to many of them. The strong were unable to go, and the weak were definitely not the match of an opponent like the Asura King. The Asura King's source energy contained the special laws of the God-Beast mystic realm, and it would be able to make up for Lin Ming's comprehension of laws to an extremely great degree. In fact, the mystic realms of the divine realm were far larger than most people ever imagined. Every single mystic realm could be called its own separate universe. With the divine realm's 3,000 great worlds and the billion worlds of the lower realms, there were different laws everywhere. Every single world contained infinite mysteries and countless different space-times. The God-Beast mystic realm was only a single one of these. Bang! As the seal was undone, Lin Ming's body shined as if a sun appeared within him. A pure mystic realm energy thoroughly erupted, savagely attacking his body. In the moment that the energy erupted, Lin Ming's physical body completely decomposed as his flesh collapsed. At that moment, Lin Ming began to officially attack the 8th stage of life destruction. In the past when Lin Ming was in the Skyspill continent, because of the limitations on one's horizons due to insufficient resources and inheritances, 8 Fall was the symbol of the top character that would be remembered throughout history. And now, Lin Ming had finally stepped into the 8th stage of life destruction. The rays of light became increasingly bright. Lin Ming's skin, organs, muscles, everything began to break down into the tiniest particles. Even his dantian broke and his black hole revolving core split apart. Then, his soul also began to decompose. At the 7th, 8th and 9th stages of life destruction, the human body would break down, the revolving core would shatter, and even the soul would dissolve. This was the so-called breaking and reforming of a martial artist's essence, energy, and divine. Normally, an extremely talented character like Lin Ming would not experience any dangers upon crossing 8 Fall. But, he cultivated dual body and energy, and thus his body was extremely tough. He would encounter multiple layers of resistance in crossing 8 Fall. But, Lin Ming's foundation was solid and he even had the source strength of the Asura King supporting him. In addition, with Mo Eversnow watching over him, there wasn't any problem at all. A normal dual body and energy martial artist would find crossing every single stage of life destruction to be a tremendous life or death hurdle. If their talent, resources, or lucky chances were lacking, they would instead directly perish during life destruction. However, from the very start and up until now when he was crossing the 8th stage of life destruction, Lin Ming had consumed all sorts of heavenly materials, gathered all sorts of rare lucky chances, and had even borrowed the strength of special thunder and flames to arrive at this point. Just this alone would cause nearly all geniuses of the divine realm to shrink back in fear from ever choosing the path of dual body and energy cultivation. After all, a person had limited time and energy. If so, then maybe it would be more beneficial to spend all that time meditating on the laws so that they could experience a greater baptism of laws during 9 Fall. As Lin Ming's soul completely broke down and mixed into his primordial soup of life, his consciousness still faintly existed. He could feel a sea of special energy floating all around him. This energy was completely different from the energies currently present in the divine realm, and it also represented a different power of laws. These were mystic realm laws. Lin Ming wandered through this sea of mystic realm energy and mystic realm laws for an untold period of time. His soul broke again and again and again. He forgot the passing of time and even his sense of self. During this period, Mo Eversnow continued to stand guard next to Lin Ming. As she looked at a nearby hourglass, she could see that 18 days had passed. Lin Ming's crossing of the 8th stage of life destruction was finally coming to an end. The process of Lin Ming crossing life destruction this time was extremely slow. His body, Danshan, and soul were far more thoroughly broken down. This was because of the mystic realm laws. It could be said that Lin Ming's soul was experiencing a continued baptism. And at this moment, Lin Ming's body began to truly reform. Above the hidden cave dwelling, with the clapping of thunder, all of the heaven and earth origin energy was stirred up. The heaven and earth origin energy for several hundred miles around was stirred up, forming a massive vortex. A cloud slowly formed in the skies. This was Lin Ming's 8-fall origin energy cloud. As Lin Ming crossed 8-fall, without any surprise at all, an origin energy cloud world phenomenon appeared once more. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1072 Display of Strength. Chapter 1072 Display of Strength. As soon as Mo Eversnow sensed the appearance of the origin energy cloud, she perked up. Although there had been several layers of concealing array formations laid down, they were only to hide the cave dwelling. It was extremely difficult to hide this sort of turbulent heaven and earth origin energy. Luckily, there wasn't any sort of extremely powerful master on this planet. As long as no divine lord powerhouse appeared, Mo Eversnow would be able to kill them. The origin energy cloud grew increasingly large. From 3 miles, to 6 miles, 9 miles, 12 miles, all the way to 18 miles. 6-layered heavens life destruction. Mo Eversnow's complexion changed as she sensed the size of the origin energy cloud outside of the cave dwelling. A 6-layered heavens 9th stage life destruction couldn't be considered anything at all, but a 6-layered heavens 8th stage life destruction was something else. When Lin Ming finally broke through to the 9th stage of life destruction, the size of the origin energy cloud he produced then would be on a horrifying scale. At this moment, the particles of Lin Ming's flesh and blood turned into a red light that broke out of the cave dwelling, piercing straight into the origin energy clouds. The heavens and earth lost their color as winds and storms surged about. The origin energy clouds contained both mystic realm laws as well as grand mist laws. The simultaneous existence of both of these caused the clouds to alternate between a dark gray and dark red. This was a completely different scene from the origin energy clouds that appeared when an ordinary martial artist crossed 9-fall. It would take some time for Lin Ming to finish his baptism of laws in the origin energy clouds. Mo Eversnow cast out her divine sense as far as she could reach, keeping a tight guard over every minor change. If she encountered a middle or late divine lord realm powerhouse, then she would rather interrupt Lin Ming's 8th stage life destruction and have him not fully complete it than risk his life. Of course, the chances of this happening were extremely tiny. When Lin Ming left, his whereabouts were kept completely secret. Besides Huo Violencestone, Yang Little Moon, and a few other people, no one even knew that Lin Ming had left the ancient Phoenix clan. Then, he had used the universal Great Void Shift on the spirit ship and had long ago arrived at a different great world of the divine realm. He had even chosen a planet where the average martial artist's cultivation was extremely low. If he happened to run into a divine lord powerhouse that was simply traveling about, then it could only be said he was extremely unlucky. Millimeter. Some people have arrived. Mo Eversnow turned and glanced in a distant direction. She was looking towards an island several thousand miles away. There was a large gang located on this island. The difference between a gang and a sect was that a sect had a core inheritance continually passed down, whereas a gang was nothing but a loose organization of martial artists gathered together for some purpose. This was only a large gang in the context of this planet. Of course, even saying that, the truth was that its strength was around equal to the Skyspill continent's 9 Furnace Divine Kingdom. In the divine realm, there were numerous holy lands. As for small sects and small gangs like this, they had reached a terrifying number. There were more of them than there were drops of water in the endless sea. When adventuring in the outside world, one would usually encounter small sects and gangs like these. As for a larger influence like the ancient Phoenix clan, there couldn't be said to be too many of them on a great world of the divine realm, thus they were relatively rare. What is that? An early divine sea martial artist discovered the changes happening in the distant heaven and earth origin energy, as well as the flashing grey and red lights. Is it a world phenomenon of a heavenly treasure being born? Or is it the 9-fall phenomenon listed in the ancient texts? I doubt it is someone crossing 9-fall, it is different from what I've read. Then again, it's not like crossing 9-fall is so easy. On our continent such a situation hasn't appeared in several thousand years. Judging from how intense the heaven and earth origin energy fluctuations are, it is probably a rare treasure being born unto the world. This might be our great lucky chance. Let's go and take a look. The location that Mo Eversnow had chosen for this cave dwelling was the richest point of origin energy on this planet. Going into seclusion here would be extremely beneficial to Lin Ming. But, this place having the richest origin energy also meant that it had the most sects and gangs, and the competition between powerhouses here was also the most intense. In fact, there were indeed a great number of heavenly materials here, thus many robbers and bandits had gathered here too. And Lin Ming had stirred up too much heaven and earth origin energy in his crossing of Eightfall. Soon, the martial artists or 3 nearby gangs spotted him and began rushing over. Among these people, there were only over a dozen Divine Sea Realm martial artists, and the majority were Life Destruction Realm martial artists along with several Revolving Core Realm juniors out for adventuring. Even in the Divine Realm, most martial artists were still low-level ones like these, especially on such a small planet. Millimeter. There's an energy field barrier blocking the way. Is this an energy field formed by the treasure? Attack it, destroy it. Before these martial artists arrived, Mo Eversnow had already used her world of will projection to lock out the surrounding space, not allowing anyone to approach or discover what was happening inside. For someone like Mo Eversnow, it was extremely easy for her to keep out this group of people. And at this time, Lin Ming's life destruction also began to come to an end. The origin energy clouds began to contract and shrink downwards. At novel being at. Lin Ming's brain, bones, organs, muscles, blood, skin, hair, all of it began to form one after the other. This included even his soul. After being tempered with so much energy, the law fragment runes had carved themselves into Lin Ming's very flesh and blood, and even into his marrow. He had finally crossed the 8th stage of life destruction. Lin Ming suddenly opened his eyes and lightning seemed to crackle in his pupils. Every breath he took seemed to inhale and exhale pure heaven and earth origin energy. From the 7th stage to the 8th stage of life destruction, although he had only crossed a small boundary, his strength had actually soared to another level. This sort of effect was far from what passing a small boundary could be described with. If he had to fight against the 8-fall Crimson Strife Cloud from the illusionary god combat array, he could even roll right over him. Not bad. Mo Eversnow said some rare words of appreciation. There are quite a few people that have gathered outside. Deal with them as you wish. Mo Eversnow took back her own world of will projection and submerged into the magic cube. As the energy field was removed, Lin Ming immediately fell into the encirclement of the martial artists from the 3 gangs. Of these people, the ones leading were mostly at the late Divine Sea, and the strongest one even near the Divine Transformation Realm. That person wore a black medium-grade Saint artifact armor and had an extremely large and robust build. The black-armored large man looked through Lin Ming's cultivation and his eyes flashed with a cold light. He released and covered Lin Ming with his killing intent, trying to suppress Lin Ming with his own pressure. Brat, are you the only one here? Which gang are you from? Every world in the Divine Realm had different customs and traditions. This planet had more gangs than they did sects. Martial artists that joined a gang did so through a combination of interests. They might join together to help complete various tasks given to them by their sects from different planets, or they might be organizing more people to explore mystic realms, or they might even be part-time robbers. In fact, many large gangs were nothing but roaming packs of robbers. The black-armored large man didn't think Lin Ming traveled here from some other planet. For an 8th stage life destruction boy to engage in interstellar travel was a completely idiotic idea. And looking at Lin Ming's solid foundation, this boy seemed to have some talent. You fucker, our boss has asked you a question. Are you deaf? Seeing Lin Ming remain silent, several of the black-armored large fellows underlings grew angry. Their group had over a dozen Divine Sea Masters, and they were now threatening an 8th stage life destruction boy with their killing intent. However, the boy did not kneel and beg for mercy, nor was he scared shitless. How could any one of them feel comfortable about this? It had to be known that these martial artists were all people that constantly danced on the edge of death. They were masters who had been tempered through countless bloody battles. They could tell at first glance that Lin Ming was likely one of those disciples of a distinguished family. These people had deep backgrounds, but they were in reality nothing more than flowers grown in a greenhouse. They simply couldn't withstand the wind and rain of the world. Fuck. This damned idiot, I think that he has already taken the treasure. Cut off his limbs and search his soul, we're taking the treasure back. An early Divine Sea monkey-faced man unhappily said. He was originally a bandit to begin with, so doing this sort of thing came naturally to him. He prepared to act as soon as he spoke. Lin Ming's cultivation was simply too low for him to develop any sort of caution in his heart. But just as he was about to attack, Lin Ming was actually the first one to do so. Lin Ming didn't even use the Phoenix Blood Spear. He simply lifted 2 fingers. Using fingers as a spear light shot outwards. A shimmering blue beam of light crossed through the skies. No one was able to clearly make out the path of this beam of light. With just a light puff sound, the monkey-faced man's forehead was directly pierced through by the light. Blood splashed out from the back of his head as he died on the spot. In that moment, everyone was stunned. No one had sensed Lin Ming's killing intent. All they saw was a flash of blue light and then the monkey-faced man had died. This was too strange. Some people even suspected whether or not that was Lin Ming who had just attacked. Everyone be careful. There is some sort of unknown offensive treasure on that brat's body. It might even be what caused those heaven and earth origin energy fluctuations just now. Let's attack together. As Lin Ming killed a person with a single strike, even the black-armored large fellow was alarmed by this. However, he didn't panic. He didn't believe that Lin Ming had this sort of strength to begin with. There must be some other secret to such a trick. If he ran away just because he didn't understand something, and in the end it turned out that all his fears were due to his own idiocy, then he really wouldn't have any face left. Then again, his cultivation neared the divine transformation realm, and he could also instantly kill that monkey-faced man. There was just no need for him to fear Lin Ming. Over a dozen divine sea powerhouses attacked together, as well as several 8th stage life destruction martial artists. As for 9-fall geniuses, they weren't cabbages even in the vast divine realm, so how could they possibly appear on such a small planet like this? It seems that all of you are used to being bandits. Your cultivation methods and understandings of concepts are far too different from each other, truly a crowd of rabble, nothing more than the dregs of the divine realm. Today, I shall enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Facing over a dozen divine sea powerhouses, Lin Ming's expression was calm and steady. He flicked out his fingers and dozens of spear lights instantly shot out. These spear lights were a deep azure color, and they also contained the concept of endlessness. A single wisp of azure true essence could destroy a wisp of ordinary true essence several times stronger. As for these divine sea powerhouses, their talent was even inferior to that of the worst Firebird Hall disciples of Phoenix Cry Palace. As for the strongest black-armored large fellow among them, he was about the same as Yang Yu. In front of Lin Ming's attacks, their protected true essence was nothing more than rotten paper, easily pierced through. Puff puff puff. Blood rained down. Of those divine sea martial artists, over half of them immediately died. All of the 8th stage life destruction martial artists died, and the survivors were all left severely wounded. There were even some spear lights that stabbed through several people together. This is monster. All of the surviving martial artists were petrified. The black-armored large fellow leading them turned paler than death, his entire body trembling. This time, he had been able to clearly see that Lin Ming hadn't used any type of saint artifact to attack. All he did was send out his true essence to kill his enemies. This was only possible because his control of his true essence had reached a terrifying degree. Thus, when he killed his enemies, he hadn't wasted even a bit of true essence. As for why there had been no killing intent when Lin Ming had killed the monkey-faced man, this was because killing intent was originally a type of force field formed by one's desire to kill. If one were up against fundamentally insignificant opponents, for instance a man stepping on ants, then there would be no killing intent at all. In other words, in front of Lin Ming, the monkey-faced man had been nothing more than an ant. It wasn't until now, when he faced several late divine sea martial artists, that Lin Ming revealed his killing intent. Tip: you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1073 True Martial World. Chapter 1073 True Martial World. Run away. Quickly run away. Everyone scatter. Great Master, I beg you not to kill me. Foolish little me was confused. I had eyes and yet I still couldn't see Mount Tai, and now I've offended Great Master. I beg that Great Master spare my life. As these murderers and robbers saw Lin Ming kill them so aggressively, all of them were scared witless. In just a split second, over half of all the divine sea martial artists had been killed. This sort of strength surpassed the scope of their understanding. And since they were nothing more than a gang that had gathered together casually, they began to surrender upon the sight of such a powerful enemy. As Lin Ming saw the disgusting looks on these people's faces, he sneered, "When you want to kill others you kill them, but when you find out you can't, you decide to kneel and beg for mercy instead. Where is there such a wonderful deed in this world? Since you've already decided to murder someone, you should have come to terms with your own potential death." Kai kai kai. A spear light flashed. 7 or 8 martial artists were pierced through, instantly dying. Fight him to the death. As the martial artists saw that there was no path to survival left for them, they decided to desperately go all out against Lin Ming. But Lin Ming simply swept his hand out and a spear light crossed through the horizon, beheading all of them. As he killed these people, some early life destruction and revolving core junior martial artists had already fled dozens of miles away by now. Lin Ming didn't bother with them. He directly chased the black-armored large man. The black-armored large man was the only peak late divine sea martial artist in the group, and he had also reached the 8th stage of life destruction. Lin Ming would naturally focus on him. He didn't use his fingers as a spear anymore. He directly flourished the Phoenix Blood Spear. 999 small blood spears waved through the skies, forming a crimson storm. Chasing thunder. Lin Ming's speed reached the peak. The Phoenix Blood Spear thrust straight towards the black-armored large man's back. At novel being at. The black-armored large man crazily roared and then swiveled around. He took out his own high-grade saint artifact serrated sword and chopped down at Lin Ming. He knew that he wasn't Lin Ming's match, thus he used this suicidal type of attack. As long as Lin Ming stabbed him, then he would definitely be able to tear apart Lin Ming. If one was up against a much stronger opponent, this method was indeed a smart choice. Unfortunately, the one that the black-armored large man had bumped into was Lin Ming. As the Phoenix Blood Spear was about to clash with the serrated sword, in that moment, Lin Ming's thoughts dug into his spiritual sea. The Grand Mist battle spirit broke out, forming a world of will projection. CA. The black-armored large fellow felt his shoulders sink. He could only feel that his serrated sword suddenly seemed to be wrapped up in some invisible web. His speed plummeted. At the same time, Lin Ming's Phoenix Blood Spear rapidly accelerated. He let go of the spear and with the support of the Grand Mist battle spirit, the spear shot forwards with a shrill whistling sound, piercing through the black-armored large fellow's chest. Peng. With his heart torn apart, the black-armored large man looked down at the massive hole in his chest that blood gushed from. Even at the end, he still couldn't believe that he had been instantly killed by an 8th stage life destruction martial artist. Gold battle spirit. Are you really a life destruction martial artist? The black-armored large man whispered. Soon, his eyes glazed over and he no longer spoke. Lin Ming put away the Phoenix Blood Spear. Because he had been so fast, the spear edge hadn't even been wetted with blood. After this fight, those several life destruction and revolving core juniors that managed to luckily escape wouldn't believe that the one who slaughtered them had an 8th stage life destruction cultivation. They all thought that Lin Ming was hiding his true strength from them. Lin Ming wasn't some demon who killed without rhyme or reason. Out of the dozens of martial artists that had gathered here, there were some who didn't have any killing intent. They were the ones who had come purely to seek treasures and without the intention of robbing other martial artists. He simply let those people run away. As for the possibility of those people revealing his whereabouts because he let them go and thus drawing the attention of his enemies, that was simply impossible. The Divine Realm was just too vast. There were countless planets with countless strange and miraculous events occurring at all times. No matter how great an intelligence organization was, it would still be impossible to cover the entirety of the Divine Realm. Moreover, Lin Ming was at a great world far away from Atlas Word. What happened just now was also a minor matter that simply didn't warrant anyone's concern. Like this, Lin Ming left this small planet. His destination was True Martial World. True Martial World wasn't ranked among the largest of the Divine Realm's 3,000 great worlds, but it did have one of the most glorious reputations. This was because it was one of the busiest and most prosperous trade markets in the Divine Realm. On True Martial World, countless great trade associations and auctions houses were converged. At any given moment there were limitless heavenly materials being bought and sold. It was said that in the marketplaces and auction houses here, there were even harvests for a World King level powerhouse. Of course, Lin Ming didn't come here for True Martial World's bustling economic scene. Although he had many priceless treasures, most of them could not be revealed to the public and it was impossible for him to trade them for money. As for the currency of the Divine Realm, that was Violet Sunstones. Besides the Violet Sunstones that Huo Violet Stone gave Lin Ming, the rest of the ones he had were taken from the corpses of Dragon One and the other disciples of the ancient Dragon Clan. However, although he was currently much wealthier than a martial artist at his level should be, compared to those people that came to True Martial World to bid on items, he was simply a joke. The true reason that Lin Ming came to True Martial World was to seek out the chess piece that the Verdant Feather Holy Lands had arranged for in the past, as well as to obtain the resources that no Ever Snow had left behind. In a great and endless red desert, every grain of sand was bright red like blood. Above the desert, wild winds raged about, stirring up massive tornadoes of sand and creating great crimson seas that reached the heavens. These wild winds contained an extremely powerful disintegrative and smothering power. Any Xiontian realm martial artist that was sucked into these sandstorms would be blown into pieces and suffer a horrifying death. And above this blood-red desert, the skies were also a deep red. This was a divergent world. In the Skyspill continent, when one referred to a divergent world they could be referring to the Holy Demon continent or even the Divine Realm. But in the Divine Realm, a divergent world often held a simple meaning that was a Divine Realm mystic realm. These different worlds had different laws compared to a primary world of the Divine Realm, and there was also a space barrier that separated them. These mystic realms came in multiple layers with endless distances, they could even be called another universe. When Lin Ming entered the God-Beast mystic realm, that was only one of the countless mystic realms of the Divine Realm. Although there were countless mystic realms in the Divine Realm, only a small portion of them had known entrances that connected to the Divine Realm primary worlds. The other mystic realms were either sealed off or their entrances were unknown. Without a doubt, a mystic realm meant exorbitantly rich resources and fortuitous encounters. Because these mystic realms were incomparably ancient, many of them had a history that was longer and more wondrous than many great worlds of the Divine Realm. These mystic realms had continuously gathered heavenly materials over an immeasurable span of time. Moreover, they were rarely visited. Thus, the amount of wealth accumulated within them could be imagined. The entrance to this mystic realm with the limitless Red Desert was located at the main continent of True Martial World. It was referred to by others as the Red Desolate Mystic Realm. This mystic realm was jointly governed by several influences of True Martial World. At this time, above the desert, a number of martial artists had gathered in the air. There were around 700 to 800 of them that were scattered in small groups all over the vast Red Desert. From high above the skies, they looked no different to ants. The overwhelming majority of these martial artists were at the Revolving Core Realm, and the remainder were at the Divine Sea Realm. Of the Divine Sea powerhouses, the ones with the highest cultivation among them were at the Middle Divine Sea. Even then there were only several of them. The rest were at the Early Divine Sea Realm. These people all seemed to be searching the desert. Once they made a discovery, they would begin to excavate it. At times, they would dig out something similar to black crystals, and sometimes they would dig out small pieces of beast bones, spirit medicines, and even spirit plants. It was obvious that these people were all gathering resources in the mystic realm. As for those divine sea martial artists, although they also helped in gathering resources, their main duties were to oversee the operation and to stand guard over everyone else. These martial artists were all disciples of true martial world's Carefree Island. Everyone hurry up as much as you can. We have less than an hour left until we are automatically transported out of here by the laws of the mystic realm. We have to take advantage of this time we have left to gather as many resources as we can. Our harvests this time cannot be low. The one who spoke was a young blue-clothed martial artist. He was clearly leading this group of excavators. His cultivation was at the peak of the Middle Divine Sea, and he was just a little bit away from breaking into the Late Divine Sea realm. Yes. The martial artists below responded in unison. It was clear that this blue-clothed martial artist had a great deal of prestige here. Perk up your minds and keep guard all around you. This final stretch of time is always the most dangerous of all. Be careful that those fellows from Splinter Soul Mountain or the Occult Bone Clan don't try to come and steal our spoils at the last moment. Don't worry, elder senior apprentice brother. If anyone dares to steal from us, we'll slaughter them until they run away with their tails between their legs. Several Divine Sea disciples casually chatted. But one could see that they were in fact very nervous and vigilant, not seeming relaxed at all. To a martial artist, resources were life. In a mystic realm of a divergent world, there was wealth to be found everywhere. But this wealth was often found at the edge of life or death. There were countless extreme talents in the divine realm that had perished in these divergent world mystic realms. Just as that disciple's voice was heard, the blue-cloaked youth captain's expression suddenly changed. He looked up into the distance, and he could see that faintly, between the endless grains of blood-red sand, there was the appearance of people's shadows. These people were menacingly rushing over. Their intentions were clearly bad. As everyone else saw this, their complexions also changed. Splinter Soul Mountain. Occult Bone Clan. So many, there must be 60 to 70 of them. Heavens. How could there be so many? The disciples of Carefree Island felt a chill crawl down their backs. In this divergent world mystic realm, sending a revolving core martial artist here cost an extremely low price. But, for a Divine Sea martial artist to arrive here, they actually had to pay a massive number of violet sunstones. As for sending 60 to 70 of those people, that was truly an astronomical figure. They've come to steal our resources. Senior apprentice brother Zayao, what do we do? Several Divine Sea martial artists cried out in panic. Although they were outstanding geniuses among martial artists of their level, their opposition wasn't poor either. And facing numbers several times their own, once they fought, the results could be imagined. The blue-clothed youth called Senior Apprentice Brother Zayao grit his teeth and shouted, "Fight! Although they are here to steal our resources, that doesn't mean they'll let us live even if we surrender. Fight with everything you have. We have less than an hour left until we're transmitted out of here. If we can last until the end, then we win. Fight. Kill." The 10 plus Divine Sea disciples of Carefree Island shot into the sky. A tragic and cruel battle soon commenced. I'm here. This is true martial world. Lin Ming floated high above a light yellow continent. Looking from high up, he could see no limit to its ends. The place that Lin Ming had arrived at was not a planet, but the central continent of true martial world. Tip, you can use left, right, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Martial World. Chapter 1074 Carefree Island. Chapter 1074 Carefree Island. Every great world of the Divine Realm's 3,000 great worlds had a central continent called the Primary World. This primary world was a landmass of nearly unimaginable breadth, and was also considered the core of a Divine Realm great world. The heaven and earth origin energy here was the richest, and the resources bred here were also of the highest quality. The number of people living on a primary world reached an incalculable number, the average strength of the martial artists was higher, and the inheritances they studied were also much better. Even the common people practiced martial arts. If one walked into the marketplace of mortal nations, they would see altering muscle and bone forging realm martial artists everywhere. Even Hushan and Xiontian martial artists were relatively common. If the foundation of people was excellent, then there would naturally be more masters and the sects would also be larger. Almost 90% of the Holy Lands were located on primary worlds. Far above the seas of true martial world's primary world, looking down, one could see vast and surging waves of mist with countless islands scattered all throughout. These islands came in various sizes. The smaller ones were a few dozen miles wide, and the larger ones were tens of thousands of miles wide, no smaller than a continent. There was a particularly large cluster of islands. This cluster of islands was across a Holy Land sect called Carefree Island. The main island of Carefree Island was tens of thousands of miles wide, and there were also 36 branch islands. In this regard, it was similar to the ancient Phoenix clan's 72 branch palaces. However, Carefree Island's overall power was far worse than the ancient Phoenix clan's. One was a peak Holy Land whereas the other one was a quasi-Holy Land. According to how sects were divided in the Skyspill continent, a divine realm Holy Land would be considered a 9th grade sect. But, Carefree Island was only an 8th grade sect. In other words, Carefree Island was 2 grades higher than the Demon God Imperial Palace of the past. Demon God Imperial Palace had taken Divine Sea Realm powerhouses as elders, whereas Carefree Island took Divine Lord powerhouses as elders. But in the ancient Phoenix clan, Divine Lord realm powerhouses could only serve as branch palace elders. At this time, on a branch island that was several thousand miles wide, many martial artists were gathered.